Okay. Well, it's 6 o'clock, and we're going to call the meeting to order of the Budget Committee for Wednesday, May 24th. Looks like everyone's here, so I don't need to do a roll call. Everyone that was here on Monday is here again tonight. Thank you for doing that. Announcements. Is there any announcements from anybody?
Yeah, I have just a couple. One, Tammy asked me to remind everybody to speak into the microphone, even if we can hear you and you think that you're being heard well. She said that on YouTube, you can't be heard very well, and that's necessary both for the public, but also for helping with transcription and things like that. So please speak into the microphone. And then I also wanted to just make an announcement. You'll notice in your minutes that you were all referred to as your name and as committee members and not counselors or mayor. Summer actually pointed out that the state law actually requires that you are all budget committee members, and there isn't a difference between the counselors and the non-elected members of the body. So when we refer to council members as their name, we're not being disrespectful, and we just wanted to explain that. That's all I've got.
Yeah, thanks for that reminder, Julia. And I was reminded on Monday after the meeting about the framework of the committee, and Julia highlighted that. So, Summer, thank you for that reminder. To that point, I want tonight to be the voice of the committee, i.e. the citizen members of the committee. So please, I want you folks to have more of a dialogue than happened on Monday. Obviously, the council will see this again as an end result, right? And we'll be addressing it again in total. So I really want you to be the voice tonight. So I'm going to defer the questions to you to start with. And then if the council has any, if the rest of the committee members that happen to be on the council have any questions, we'll go that route. So that sounds fair. I just want to make sure you guys have an opportunity to be the voice, and that's really the way the committee is designed. So thank you for doing that. Anybody else before we get moving? Awesome. With that, we're looking for the approval of the minutes from the May 22nd, 2023 Budget Committee meeting. Thank you. It's been moved and second to approve the minutes from Monday's night meeting. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries unanimous. That leads us to the item number 5, the budget review continued. It's Mr. Ludwig.
Actually, I'm going to start. Sorry.
Julia.
So I just wanted to, following up from the meeting on Monday, we did prepare a memo that was emailed out to you last evening. I wasn't going to go through that in detail, but I did have a few clarification points that is in your budget meeting number 1, memo number 2. So I just wanted to go over those real quickly based on some clarification in the memo and subsequent questions that came up this afternoon. One is just clarification of the data that's in the memo about court and police traffic citations. The tables for police indicate fiscal year, but it's really calendar year. So that number is for 2022. And Chief John says that for 2023, it's actually trending to be closer to the 2019 numbers, but we'll see at the end of 2023. I also sent the information or a question to our city attorney about the idea of the street light, just to make sure that there wasn't going to be an issue because of the way it was codified. It was a specific amount and then talked about inflation. In and of itself, it isn't a problem, but he raised some concerns that as codified, it may be considered a tax, which is subject to Measure 5 limitations versus a fee. And while we can do that, it's a process. So my recommendation is that we not make any changes this fiscal year and explore that over the year. Getting revenue that you didn't budget is not an issue at all. So if we do something through the year, that's great. So that's just wanted to clarify that. There was also a follow-up question on the fiscal policy minimum for the general fund unappropriated, because it's listed as there is no minimum for the general fund unappropriated. And the short answer is that based on how the fiscal policy is written and applied, there is no minimum, but I'm going to ask Summer to explain that.
Yeah, so at the last meeting, we talked about that working capital reserve being equal to 60 days operating expenses. So as I worked through that graph for you guys, the comparison, I went back to the fiscal policies just to triple, quadruple check. And there is actually there is an exception and a different calculation for working capital for the general fund. And it is calculated as the negative cash flow, if there is negative cash flow, from July 1 through the end of October. And the intent of that is to make sure that the city has enough property tax to carry it through when those property taxes primarily come in November. So I went through the calculations as defined in the policy, and the way general fund is sitting right now, especially with that larger beginning fund balance, there is plenty of cash at the beginning of the year to get you through until November, which means, technically speaking, right now you don't need anything in that working capital reserve. That is not the intent, I think, of the fiscal policies when they were set, and I've recommended to management that they definitely review those. Questions about that?
So just the bottom line is there is no minimum, but we recommend keeping money in there because
Yes.
that's not the intent.
Yes. Obviously, we're not going to spend it down to zero, I would hope.
Any questions on that? So one additional question came in this afternoon and I think you guys have this in front of you. It was a question about the pool and whether cutting pool hours in half would reduce the amount of general fund transfer needed. And the short answer is it's unclear. I'm going to summarize, but essentially we think because it costs a lot to operate the pool and maintain the pool through materials and services, regardless of how many hours it's open, cutting hours might cut staff, but it will also cut revenue. And so it's probably cutting hours will really kind of be a net zero balance. So obviously, it depends on the hours that are cut and how popular those are. So, we can certainly do more analysis, but that was the attempt to answer that question. So that's all the follow-up questions that were from Monday through this afternoon, and now I'll turn it over to Lance.
Well, thank you, Julia. Good evening, members of the Budget Committee. I am going to present to you tonight the Public Works budget, which entails several funds. We're going to start with the Parks Fund, and briefly, I'm going to give you a synopsis or a summary of what the Parks Department does for our community. And then I'm going to go into the highlights. And if you could hold your questions until the end of the slides, I only have 2 or 3 slides per fund. And I'll be here to answer any questions you have. Bring them on and we can get any kind of issues resolved. And so I'm going to start tonight with the Parks Fund.
Might need to move that mic closer to you, perhaps.
You can't hear it?
People at home is all I'm worried about.
All right.
Thank you.
The city of Stayton owns and maintains pedestrian trails, mini parks, neighborhood parks, community parks, and natural open spaces. We have about 122 acres of parks, and we have 1.57 employees to maintain those parks. With that, we have highlights that we've had last year, and we have some coming up. So the Parks and Recreation Board continues to work on the path out at Mill Creek Park. It's about a half-a-mile track. We've continued to put chips down on that and compact it for people to use. We've fabricated and constructed a new kiosk out there for people to look at. It's got park trail, the trails map. It has other information, wildlife viewing information there. The Parks and Recreational Board recently planted 9 trees out at Sandy Am Park. We were losing a lot of trees in the parks, and there was no shade. So one of our former Parks Board members suggested we plant trees out there. We planted 9. 2 weeks ago, we planted a remembrance tree for Susan Brandt out at Neatling Addition Park. Looks really neat. If you guys have time, go out there and take a look. Susan was an extraordinary person, and she did wonderful things for our community, so we thought that would be a great idea. We've installed engineered wood chips in our parks. We continue to work on the Henry A. Porter Dog Park. Our parks board, or our parks supervisor, or our parks person, our parks worship person constructed an obstacle course out there for the dogs, and we continue to work on that. Highlights for the 23-24, we're going to be putting in pickleball courts at the tennis courts. We're going to put 2 courts down, paint 2 courts in there. We're going to see how it goes. Hopefully we don't get a bunch of complaints regarding noises and things like that, but we're going to be monitoring that. We've got a new roof that needs to be installed on the Mill Creek Park barn. It is in bad shape, so we'll be focusing on doing that this next year. We'll be putting more engineered wood chips in the parks. We're going to be replacing some of the rubber matting up at the Sandy Am Park. It's coming undone and it's separating, and we're going to be replacing some of that. And one of our bigger projects of the year will be clearing out some area down south of the water treatment plant at Riverfront Park. It's very forested in there. We have found that people like to pitch tents down there and create sites. So what we want to do is go down and thin it out so you can see the river from the road, and invite, I think the Parks Board as well as our staff think that will also enhance the park and bring more people to the river through that area. And we're hoping to build upon that and actually open up the property to the west of the bridge. It's a beautiful agate beach that no one really gets to, but when we open this area up down there by the water treatment plant, we think more people will use it. Let me go to the next slide here. So the capital outlays, the engineered wood chips for the parks. We're going to put a boulder barrier out at Pioneer Park. We've lost all the timbers out there, so there's really no curb to prevent people from driving in on the Neatling addition. We're going to put boulders along there to prevent that from happening. The rubber mats at Sandy Am Park, and then we've got $20,000 for brush removal down at Riverfront Park. That concludes the Parks Fund. Do we have any questions regarding the parks?
Mr. Singh.
So I'm not quite familiar with engineered wood chips. What exactly is that?
They're a chip that are fabricated by, well, there's several different vendors, but they're built and they're manufactured and they don't have slivers. So if when you're putting chips down in the parks, you don't want kids falling down into like hog fuel, which can big time slivers into the kids, and it's just not a good thing. So wood chips are a little bit, these engineered wood chips are a little bit more, but they're safer for people that use the park.
I have one more question as well.
Go ahead.
I noticed on the back here, the parks does not receive any SDS funds this year. SDC funds. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. Where do you see that at?
Page 80 of 113 in our binders. Underneath Parks SDC fund. Changes from previous year. No transfer schedule.
Oh, well, no, that's what, I guess what I'm getting at. So what you're saying is we're not going to be using, we don't have any projections to use any SDC funds for the parks. No, we do not. Meaning that we don't have any improvements scheduled that we can use SDC funds for new growth, new parks, things like that. New equipment, like Mill Creek Park. If we were to develop that, we could transfer funds over to build that park using those SD funds, C funds. But we can't replace like park equipment with that because that's not something that's attributed to new growth.
Mr. Cranston.
Is the Marion County Park to the east of Pioneer Park going to be reopened anytime soon, or do you know?
I don't know. It's not something we want to bring to the table tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Sims.
So I have a question about Mill Creek Park. Is there any, excuse me, future plans for capital outlays for the master plan for Mill Creek Park?
Well, Steve, what I will say is you were on the Parks Board. You've seen the master plan for that.
I have.
The big thing we tried for 2 years ago was to get an OPRD large grant. We were a finalist for that. We didn't get it, and we just haven't been able to apply. We haven't had the manpower to apply for one. The application's sitting there. We need to update it. I fully intend on probably doing that this year.
Okay, thanks.
So I got a text. Apparently at home, people are still having a hard time hearing you if you're not speaking directly into the microphone. So please speak directly into the microphone. Sorry.
Chair Quigley, this is Councilor Patty,
Patty.
or Committee Member Patty, I guess. Real quick, Lance, I've already texted you about this. This is coming. So there's that covering over there at Pioneer Park. I'm sure many of you probably have seen it. It has plants and shrubs growing out of the roof of it. I'm just curious if that's ever been considered for any kind of rehabilitation or, reconstruction or a tin roof, something like that.
I just received your email. I don't know, it was earlier today, but we just happened to be I had a Public Works barbecue down at the concession area at noon. So I was staying there with Bob Parsons. We were looking at it, and I was reading your text, and I asked him, how often do you clean that, Bob? And he says we do it annually. So we do clean it annually. It just happens to be that we're at the beginning of the summer, and we haven't done it yet. And so annually, we go out there and we clean off the needles and so forth. If we're talking about re-roofing it, we haven't put that in the budget. We haven't heard anything about leaking in the wintertime. It's a wood shake, so if we were to replace it with wood shake, it'd be very expensive. We could go with something like a 3-tab architectural type. It'd be a little less expensive, but we didn't put that in the budget this year.
Okay. I don't know if there's appetite for that on this committee this year, but maybe that's something we consider down the road. The other thing is there any way we can clean that more often than annually? Is there any chance of that or no?
Well, yeah, we can. I can look I'll talk to Bob about it.
Awesome. Thank you.
One thing I do want to point out, and I know you're aware of this, but I can't overemphasize this enough. We have 124 acres of parks. We have one person, 1.3 people taking care of 120. And it's not just parks. We're mowing courthouse lawn. We're doing a lot of things beyond just the parks. So I want you to be aware of that. If you walk down to a park and you see something, just kind of remember that. We have one person running around all these parks trying to maintain them and keep them clean. So email me and I'll get it taken care of. But that's what I can say. Thank you.
I'm going to use this opportunity to make a plug. We do have adopt a park options as well. So if you are with somebody who's complaining about the park and you want to encourage them to get a group of people together or something like that, talk to Lance.
Thanks for the plug. Appreciate it.
Lance, I have a question.
Certainly.
Do any of our parks in the city have adaptive play equipment?
No, we don't. We had planned on doing that at Mill Creek Park. That was part of our master plan concept,
Right.
to have some adaptive equipment in
Right.
there. We just have not. I've had people reach out to me in the last year about getting grants from them. We haven't taken them up on it. I haven't applied for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair Quigley. Lance,
Yes, ma'am.
are we having a problem with people driving on the park? That's the Nuttling Park. Is that where the Frisbee golf is?
On the north side of the road, Park Avenue. That's the road. Yes.
Are we?
We haven't, because until we used to have timbers there. The timbers are completely rotten and we've removed them, or we're continuing to remove them. They're not safe. People climb on them and they fall. They could get slivers through the hand and we'll be liable for them. So we have to remove those. And we thought we'd use boulders along there. That might be one of the cheaper ways to do it. And we've got people that that we work with regularly that have a pit, and we're thinking about using them.
Okay.
If you're referring to the boulders, I thought you would be. I was assuming you were.
Yeah, the boulder
Yeah,
barrier.
that's what I thought. We could put curb in there, but pouring a curb in there would be more expensive than that.
Can we put I'm sorry, what was there already? The timber?
Like timbers, like railroad type timbers.
Can we put that back? Or
We could do a lot of different things, yeah, probably. They'd be new. I mean, you'd have to go get new ones, and there'd be a cost for new ones. I haven't really priced those out. We figured we'd go with boulders, but you know, if we're not satisfied with the boulders, just let me know, and we can look at other options.
okay, thank you.
All right.
Mr. Cranston.
How old are those timbers that you're removing?
Older than I do not know. Wish I could answer you. I've been here 8 years, almost 8.5 years. They were here when I got here. That's all I can really tell you.
Okay. The reason I ask is because if we were to put in the timbers in 10 years, we'd be looking at replacing them again. And then in 10 years, we'd be looking at replacing them again. So while the 5,000 may look high, it's actually cheaper than 2, 3, 4 ad nauseum sets of timbers that we're going to have to replace that with.
Point taken.
Anybody else? Thanks, Lance.
Thank you. Moving on to the streets. Again, I'm going to just read the top paragraph because I don't have this memorized, so bear with me. The city of Stayton maintains 34.6 miles of streets. There are 26.3 of fully improved. Curbs, gutters, both sides, 3.1 of partially improved streets, 1 curb, gutter, and 3.87 of unimproved streets, meaning paving, no curbs, gutter, and then I think we have well over several miles of just gravel roads that we maintain. Highlights for the streets this last year. We've cleaned 221 miles of lane miles of streets. We've used 24,750 pounds of asphalt cold mix in pothole repairs. So when it's out there, you guys aren't fixed. We have gone through 24,000 pounds of cold mix to fix potholes. We are out there and we're doing the best we can. It's just that there's a lot of them. We've applied 4,600 gallons of dust control on gravel roads to keep the gravel compacted. We continue the design of the roundabout at Schaff and Golf Club Road. Currently, we're paving Wyatt Avenue out in Westtown. It's under construction now. It should be done by the end of June. And this next year, we'll be slurrying streets in Westtown. Next year, we've got continue our street sweeping, pothole repairs ongoing, dust control of all our gravel roads. We'll continue the design of the roundabout until it should be complete by the very early winter of 2024. We're going to mill and overlay Ida Street from 1st to 4th Avenue in the spring of 2024. And due to the transfer from the general fund of $300,000, we're going to add on to that Ida Street project, and we're going to mill and overlay 4th Avenue from Ida Street up to Marion Street at the same time. That will reduce mobilization costs, and we'll get more bang for our buck doing that. So you can see what our capital outlay is there. We've got the overlays, we've got the slurry seals, we've got the roundabout design, we've got the transportation SDC, and we have a new street sweeper. I'll take any questions you have regarding streets.
Remember, last year you telling us the roundabout would be done now this last year. And as far as I know, as long as I've been on this committee, we've been spending money for a roundabout design. And I haven't.
The question is, I want to make sure
I want to know where we're at.
Okay.
I understood it would be done by now.
I wish you would have been to the last city council meeting because I gave an update on the roundabout, where we're at and what's taken it. So what I will do is give you a brief summary of what's happened. Unfortunately, when you're into the engineering business and you're building roads and projects, you also have certain environmental regulations that you need to follow. We have ran into steelhead in the south side of Schaff Road, the ditch there, which opened up a whole can of worms, meaning I have to deal with the Division of State Lands, the Corps of Engineers, the Fish and Wildlife folks, National Marine Services. to get a permit to build the roundabout. That process, if you know anything about federal government, it takes a long time to work with the federal government to even get meetings. It's taken us this long to get to a point where we found a mitigation site to mitigate for that ditch on Shaft Road. The Shaft Road ditch, and I know you know where it's at, sir. On the south side of the road, that ditch that goes from Wilco Road all the way to the Salem ditch, steelhead in it. It goes to the Salem ditch, yes. It's got steelhead in it, which means it's a protected species, which means we have to mitigate because we got to fill that to build up any kind of road. It doesn't matter if we put a traffic signal in there or a roundabout. It's the same footprint. We'll fill that ditch. The Fish and Wildlife folks want us to mitigate for it, and the only way to do that is to craft or build another ditch in similar size and scope so we can transfer whatever habitat they think is in that ditch into that ditch. So now we can fill it and we can actually build the project. That's what's taken a long time. And, you know, I would have liked to have just built it that first summer. But unfortunately, when we're trying to get federal dollars, in order to get federal dollars and federal help, you have to go through a certain process. And the process is you got to talk to environmental folks to get their approval. And that's kind of what happened. We are at like 40% plans, and we have a mitigation site, so we know how to mitigate for those steelhead. We know what we have to do. Now it's a matter of just doing it. We're supposed to be done like January 24 with construction plans and specs. I think, well, right here's the total cost. So this 267, I don't have the numbers of what we spent so far. It was much less than the contract. I mean, we're at 30% right now at the plans. So we're having to spend some extra money, and I don't know what that is, but we've already paid for it, and I don't know what we have already paid for it. It's much less than the contract that we signed. Well, I will tell you this, because we're only at 30% plans. That is a good question. If we want to talk about economic development in your community, we can do that, because that is the driver for developing any of your industrial lands out there, because you need traffic. You need to be able to control the traffic at that intersection.
Docile out there for quite a while. And with the cannery going away, that has minimized traffic going that direction. And I just have a serious doubt if this whole project is even well worth it.
So I'll also add, so we are seeking federal funds. Really, the only way this project will be built is with the help of federal funds. Having a shovel-ready project that is through the design process is really critical to get those funds. So while it is certainly more than we had hoped and more than anticipated, I think our recommendation is that we get done, and then we have the ability to then seek additional funds. So that's our recommendation.
This will be 100% federally funded.
I don't know. I doubt it will be 100% federally funded.
I doubt that too. That's the next question, all right. If you do all this and get ready and you say, for example, it costs $10 million and you've got 5, where are you going to get the other 5 if you don't, if the feds only give you 5? We don't have that kind of money.
You have 40 acres of industrial land sitting on the west side of Wilco Street that will sit there for the next 50 years unless you do something with that intersection, because you can't develop it without doing something there.
I'm not sure it isn't going to sit there anyway. What are you going to put there? It's pretty restrictive.
Yeah. Okay.
Chair Quigley.
No.
Mr. Giglio, go ahead.
Yeah, so following on that line of questioning, I think I was a little surprised by this number as well, just based on our conversation on the work session. And now that I think back on it, I did see a slide that said 30% design finished. I think that the way the feeling I got from that work session was that we were further along than that. So is this number, the 267,000, is that pretty indicative of what's left to spend on the design?
Yes, this is a 100% plan approved. It'll be plan ready at this point.
Okay, so the 267 is yet to spend, and we have the ability though in this to, if we decided to not spend that on that design. Right, so because we can okay. Because to be honest, I think coming out of the work session, I was more open to it, but for some reason, I just felt like I got the impression we were just further along than this. The 267,000 does seem like a lot to invest, and I happen to kind of agree with what you were saying there. And yeah, this is one I would really want to spend some time considering, just because it's a road, right? It's about the cost of another road to be overlaid. So yeah, that's one that I would just wanted to get that clarification. I have another piece of clarification. I have another question as well on the street sweeper. There's a $350,000 for that new street sweeper. Can we talk about a little bit just the need for that? And are there any alternatives with our current equipment or used equipment or anything that would not cost $350,000?
Yeah, certainly. That's a good question. A lot of people don't recognize street sweepers or what they do because we generally do that at night when you're sleeping. First, the street sweeper serves us a lot of different functions, and you need to be aware of those functions. And normally between the beginning of October and the end of December, we are street sweeping every day for at least 6 hours, okay? And the reason we do that is to get the leaves off the road. And because if we don't, they're covering ditches, they're covering catch basins, and if we don't do that and the rain comes, it floods people's yards, or it floods the streets, becomes more dangerous, people get into accidents. So it's not just cleaning and sweeping the streets, it's making our streets safer, especially for those 3 months. The other 8 months out of the year, we're removing toxins from our streets because they take 60% of the heavy metals those street sweepers will pick up. They won't go to our catch basins. Your kids won't be out playing in the streets with heavy toxins. So there's a real reason to do this. Now, what I will say, the optimum life of a street sweeper is 4 years. After that 4 years, the depreciation goes up, and after 10 or 11 years, they recommend that you just go get another one because the cost of maintaining it is just as much as over the years, it's going to add up and it's going to be like buying a new one. And so those are the facts. Those are out there. We're at 10 years right now with the street sweeper we have. We have 28,000 miles on it, and those are all local miles. We have 2 engines on a street sweeper. It's not 1, it's 2. We have hydraulic motors throughout. Those are always breaking down. We have brushes that we change. Boy, the brushes that you see sweeping, we change those so regular. We have stocks of them in our supply. So they wear out very quickly. They're very expensive to do. And so, yeah, we're at 10 years. We're at the life cycle of that street sweeper. That is why it's in here.
Oh, I was just going to, and maybe he was going to say this, I'm sorry, Lance. I think also, given how long we know the lead time is to get a piece of equipment, I think if we wait until it's broke down, we're probably going to be a year before we have a sweeper that we don't have to rent, right?
Yeah, but yeah, it takes a while. I mean, I know Budget Committee Quigley. He's very knowledgeable of the fleet game, and so I'm not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. He knows anything that I'm saying, if it's accurate or not. But what I will say, getting a vehicle today might take you 6 to 8 months, and if you don't get it, the prices are going up. I had a truck budgeted to get last year for $36,000. I had a price. By the time it got to us, it was $47,000, and we had to turn it away. So that's the prices of fleet vehicles right now. And I know, again, Budget Committee Chairman Quigley can attest to it or not, but that's what we're faced with. And so when we get to the street sweeper, we're in much the same boat, except for that market size is smaller. It's not like going to the Ford dealership and getting a truck. You got to order these They're out of ways. And so that's kind of where we're at.
How much is it to rent?
I got to tell you, I have not checked. You can rent. I know what I will say is that I know contractors that work here. They try to get us to sweep for them because it's so expensive that they don't, to get them out here to sweep. It costs, pretty good, decent amount of money. So they're always trying to use our sweeper and pay us. But anyway, I don't know. I haven't checked that. But the other thing I wanted to point out, you said about getting used ones. Yeah, you can always get a used one. But again, I think the key point to that, what I was telling you, is the optimum life of a street sweeper is 4 years. So the ones you're going to get, I don't know how old they are, but if you go buy a used one, you might be paying more maintenance for it annually than it would be if you just went out and purchased one over 10 years. So that's what I will say.
Are there any, in terms of like when you're buying a street sweeper, just like any type of fleet or anything, are there any finance options, or is it just the straight purchase price upfront?
I haven't investigated that, so I couldn't tell you that. I'm sure Mr. Quigley could probably share that information with us. What I have done, here's the point we're at now. We've had 4 or 5 street sweepers come in and they've given us demonstrations. We're down to like 2 or 3, but I need to do a cost analysis and see which one's the best for us. Haven't done that yet. I know the 350 takes care of it. Just because it's 350 there doesn't mean I'm spending 350. It means I've got a block of money. We're going to do a cost analysis and we're going to pick the best one for us. That's what that means.
If we don't go with this option and we choose to say, let's spend more money maintaining it over the years, but not invest in a new one, is there like a rough estimate of cost per year, what that would be?
If we don't have any breakdowns, we're probably at $5,000 a year. And that's just maintenance. That's not breakdowns. That's just brushes, hydraulic fluid, things like that.
5,000 for that, but it would be, and then if we anticipate, say, let's say there's a massive breakdown, is that like a $10,000,
I don't
$40,000?
You're asking me something that's out of my purview.
Yeah.
It's speculation. Well, I will tell you that in pieces of equipment that nature, 2 things. Number one, the parts are sometimes discontinued. And so if the thing does break down on us and we don't have the availability to get that part, we're going to be stuck for a while. The other piece is tooling. Some of the tools that you need require specific tools for that replacement. So Lance makes a compelling argument as far as the need for the street sweeper. My question, we can talk about it off down the road, is just the schedule of the street sweeper. And that's a different topic, though. But he makes a compelling argument as far as, look at the things that are going on right now in the city of Domsville with their wastewater issue, right? We don't want those heavy metals going into the water supply. So,
Chair Quigley.
Ben, go ahead.
Couple things, Lance. On the roundabout design, if I'm understanding this correctly, this is money that was in and approved in last year's budget, but we didn't end up spending yet, correct?
Most of it, yes.
Okay, so this is effectively just a carryover from last year's budget that we had approved.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, that was the only point of clarification. On the overlays that we have listed here, just because I don't have the chart up in front of me, what are the we had a grading scale for those segments. What is the current condition and what is the after condition on those overlays?
What I will say is, again, when we hired GRI to do this study for us, they came up, and part of the scoping was they came up with a 5-year plan for us. These are the roads on the 5-year plan. 3rd Avenue was supposed to be done last year. We didn't get to it. 4th Avenue was supposed to be done next year. More money came in through the general fund. Instead of spending more money on mobilization and going somewhere over in Westtown to paving a road, it's right there. We're going to save money by that. So they're both on the 5-year plan.
Good. That's all. Thank you.
Chairman, quickly,
Go ahead, Luke.
what would the cost of doing 3rd Street this summer be?
Third Street, portion of it is on the 5-year plan, but we haven't, I mean, I have those numbers in my office. I don't have them with me. I don't memorize them, but it's, a portion of it is on the 5-year plan.
Well, I was just thinking that looking at Ida Street and 4th Street, would it be similar to that? Or would it be more?
You know, it really
more or
depends
less?
on the level of street. And the other thing we do look at, Budget Committee member Cranston, is we look at the other utilities that we have to replace in the street. So for example, next year we're doing Ida Street 1st to 4th. There's also a 10-inch water line from our master plan that needs to be put in there. So we have to have the dollars in our water fund to be able to build that at the same time. And so that's the other thing that we have to look at when we weigh these projects. It's not all the time, it's not just based on score. We like to look at it, and I wish it was just all on score. That means all our utilities are up to date, right? But they're not. And so I have to look at the scores and the other utilities that need to be put in that ground at the same time, so we don't have to dig roads up in a few years to put those utilities in the ground. And so getting back to your question about 3rd Avenue, I just don't have those numbers with me. I could share them with you, but I don't have them with me. The segments, I think over 2 years are about 4 blocks, 5 blocks, something like that. Yeah.
I was just thinking that if we did all 3 of those streets at the same time, that would also alleviate the cost of transport on the 3rd. And so lumping them together would be cheaper, maybe not necessarily logistically doable.
The mobilization certainly would be cheaper.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because that's sometimes more expensive than the job.
You're absolutely right. It's 10, 12% of a project is mobilization.
Thank you.
You? Ort has a question.
Oh, thank you. Lance. So to Ben's point about the roundabout design, that this is carried over from last year. So does that mean that we didn't spend that money last year?
That's correct.
So then that money is sitting there. So then
We spent some of the money on the design, but this process has been a slow go.
Sure.
Because of the environmental regulations that we've been faced with.
Oh, okay.
And so
can I pause you real quick? It's not, the question isn't actually about the roundabout design. The question is about the money
okay.
that we didn't, I know I know. I get you. I'm tracking you, okay? But my real question is, if we didn't spend the money, so does that mean that we have that money that we can also move forward?
Yeah. Whatever we didn't.
We have extra, I'm asking if we have extra money that we didn't.
So what that will do, since very little of it comes from SDCs. So that comes from the street fund. So at the end of this year, it'll be moved forward into the beginning fund balance. And from that beginning fund balance, then we start adding transportation fees. We start adding our state gas tax, or local gas tax, all our different fees that will go into that. And then we start creating our budget with that. And that is in that 267,000, that'll be part of the line item for the roundabout. But it all comes from the giant chunk of money that we carry forward and add revenue to.
Okay, but I want to know if we have more money to spend on streets. That's what I'm asking. Because if we didn't spend it last year.
I think I can.
Yeah, go ahead, Julia.
And then I
Go,
guess we're spending.
I think it's.
Okay.
So yes.
Basically, when we're doing the budget, we're looking at our budget for this year. We look at what we have budgeted and then what our actuals are. And when we're preparing the budget, we look at what we think we're going to spend this year and then carry the rest over. So I guess kind of, yes, but our budget already assumes that it's rolling over. So there isn't an extra amount of money that isn't showing up in this budget.
Whatever's not spent this year is carried over to the beginning fund balance for the next budget. So if I didn't spend, so if let's say I had 300,000 scheduled for the roundabout and we spent 100,000 of it. All right. So there's 200,000 still sitting in the street fund.
Oh, but you still need to pay for the roundabout. Okay, I got it.
That 200,000 just goes to the beginning fund balance for the next year's street fund budget. And then we start divvying it up how. I'm sorry, I'm not a finance person, but I think that's the way it works.
I got you.
Mr. Singh.
So I would like to kind of work with Mr. Walker here and his frustration with that. I second that frustration because we are, and I understand it's an economic development. You're looking to attract industry to that field for development. I get that. My issue is that we are spending city money on county roads. And if we are so concerned about the road system here for the city of Stayton, why are we working to improve something that's not ours?
Well, I don't have all the answers for that, but what I will say is I share your feeling. And since day one, and probably 150 days before we even started this process, I was working with the county, and I've shared my feelings on that, and I totally agree. And then a new city manager came along and kind of shared something what she thought, and I think carries a lot of weight, is that, yeah, they are county roads, but we're benefiting from it, from being able to develop our city land. And so if you look at it that way, yeah, we're spending the money for it, but we're going to benefit because of the development of it. That land will develop once we do that. And I know there may be naysayers out there, but it does not have a prayer to develop without that, because we don't have the traffic. It's too much congestion. That's all I'll say. And it's really not my decision. I'm just giving you guys what I interpret as the fact. In my opinion, it just won't develop. It'll sit vacant. And if we want to try to meet council goals from 2 sessions ago to provide economic development to this community, that is our industrial land out there. That is it. And if we don't do anything to try to develop that industrial land, that's our economic development. And so that's all we're trying to do.
And then I'll also add, so right now we're talking about the design, right? The design of a project is a small fraction of what the cost is to actually construct the project. By us taking the lead, getting it designed, getting it shovel ready, it helps us make the argument, not just to the federal government, but the state government and the county to chip into the project. I think if we just stop, there will be no improvement there, not just a roundabout, but a signal, anything. So if people are saying roundabout versus signal, there won't be anything, because we won't have anything to tell them that we have something that we want to build and here's the cost of it. So I think that if we get it designed, then there's a likely chance, I think, of the county allocating some funds to help with the construction of it. But if we do nothing, they're never going to, not never, it is unlikely that they will take it upon themselves to do that.
I will say, to add to that, I think the ice has melted somewhat over the last 2-3 years of just going through that process. And I think the likelihood of getting some sort of funding from the county to help is more likely. What that will be, I don't know. But I think at least we're getting positive feelers from them. They sit on the design team. They know what's going on. And so that's all I'll say.
We're still banking on something happening that I personally don't think is going to happen. I think we're so restrictive in our industrial development that to get a true perspective of some major factory or process coming in there, I don't think is going to happen. And I think you've got a serious problem with the one corner there, since I don't know when there's been a lack of definition of who actually owns it and if you could ever get clear title to it. Now, people will tell you, yeah, you can, but try it and see. I have.
I guess I don't know what corner you're talking about, but.
The corner opposite McDonald's and by the ditch that you're talking about for the steelhead. I guess that would be the southwest corner of that intersection. maybe 10 years ago, there was a foreclosure and a number of processes that went through out there. And one of the things that kept happening is nobody could provide a clear title to it. And I don't know if there is one yet.
We had a partition plat done, 2-3 years ago. You need clear title in order to do a partition plat through the county. That's all I'll say. I'm not going to disagree with you. I'll just say that the Marion County Surveyor's Office would not accept a partition plat to be filed if there wasn't clear title or if there was any cloud of title. That's all I'll say on that. I'm not going to disagree with what you have to say.
This whole process to a development. If somebody comes in there and wants to build a factory to make widgets, you say, okay, here's what you got to do with this property to make widgets.
What I will say is that it's been my experience with that property in itself. We've had several people come in to develop that property, and when we bring about an intersection improvement of any sort, and I spent a lot of years as developer, and here's what I'll say. Developers that are going to come into this community are not going to spend millions of dollars for a roundabout. They're not going to do it. They'll go somewhere else. And that's been the experience here, is that they generally.
And I'll add, because of the planner in me, in addition, and I don't, you guys have a lot more background and knowledge on all of those things. You can't require a developer to do more than is proportional to their development. So my understanding is that the cost to do this is well beyond what one development would be able to be required to do. It's a existing problem in addition to that, or partially an existing problem. So I don't think that getting a developer to one developer or one development to do that is going to be possible, which is what the economic development strategy and data indicated.
Mr. Patty.
Thank you so much, Budget Chair. So, hey, Lance, I'm just kind of curious, and I'm asking you to be speculative here, right?
I love being speculative.
I know you do, and that's why I'm pre-warning you so you're ready for it. So, as far as receiving money from the federal authorities, powers that be, whatever, what have you, do you anticipate that being possible?
Here's what I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I anticipate our team doing everything we can to get that money. That's what I can tell you. We have a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. right now going to bat for us, this little town of Stayton. And we've got people working in the state capitol. We've got people working in Marion County, all trying to get us dollars. Whether it's going to become fruitful or not, I can't tell you, David. I'll let Julia do that.
And I would say more definitively, yes. It's a question of time. I can't say it's going to be this year, next year, and 2 years. In my experience in Sherwood, we had land that was undeveloped for 10 years, and they're just now developing the road through a good amount of EDA dollars, as well as other dollars and local dollars. I think there's an urban renewal district in there as well. So yes, but if you don't plan for it, it will never happen. I think that the chances of getting funding, well, it will only get developed with outside funding as a contributor, but you're never going to get it if you don't plan for it.
Right. Thank you. I have some additional comments and responses to some of the sentiments that have been made here, but unless there's an actual budgetary motion, I'll express those during deliberation at that time.
Thank you. Mr. McDonald.
I'd just like to remind everybody, I know everybody's aware, but we do have that 100 units of housing development going on in the northeast corner of that intersection that we do not know the traffic impacts of yet. So in defense of that project, it's going to help with that regardless. And as far as economic development on the southeast side, I'd much rather have the possibility of something rather than the guarantee of nothing. As far as that goes. So I know there's some skepticism on that, and there's a whole range of possibilities there. but I'd much rather give us the capacity for success than a ceiling that we can't break through. That's all.
Mr. Gilio.
Yeah, well, actually, just to comment on what you were saying, budget committee person, member McDonald, I do remember when the apartments were approved. There was a traffic study that was done, and they said there was not going to be any impact on the traffic. I remember being minimal was the analysis, and that was actually part of what was justifying it. Justified it to be put in. That being said, I actually had one question. On these specific projects, I did not have time, right, to do deep dives into each of the projects here, the 4th Avenue, the Ida Street overlay. I'm curious as to whether, if money is appropriated, so if, say, we're able to divert more dollars into the street fund, is it necessary that we have it assigned to a particular street right now, or is that something that we can assign to the street fund and then in unallocated fund money, and then basically have a budget amendment process where we then allocate that towards a particular fund? I'm just kind of curious as to what that looks like, because I'm not necessarily willing to 100% say I'm good with all of these streets just because I haven't spent the time to like dive into it, but I'm just kind of curious as to like what that process would be.
What I will say is we have so many streets that need to be done. You could allocate whatever you want and it will get done. We don't necessarily need to align it with street. What I will say is what we try to do, to be fair with the community, because they all pay local gas tax, is to spread out the work in different quadrants, okay? So that's what we will look to do. And we will also look to see what other utilities that need to be upgraded in these roads before we can do it. Because that's, a lot of times that's the driver, is utilities. And it just really is. And that's what we look for. So that what I will say is you could throw any amount of money at us and we'll get the job done. And we'll find the road to get done.
Fantastic. And my question would just be if there would be an opportunity so if we bring in more money into the street fund, would there be a later opportunity for council input as to what those streets would be if we were able to just schedule like a work session or something like that?
Always.
Well,
Go ahead. I was just consulting with Summer. So obviously, we're trying to share the intent of the streets based on what Lance is saying and all of the factors that he's considering. At the end of the day, what you're allocating is a number, right? And so if a project costs significantly less, we might have the ability to do more. If it costs considerably more, we might have to do less. And so if you put more money there, I mean, yes, we will consult with council, but it's not like you're allocating specific projects. You're making the intent. We're not going to take those numbers and then do something entirely different, but there's a little bit of wiggle room if you want to add any.
No, I mean, I think we've said that's exactly right.
Member Wirt.
Just a comment to kind of piggyback on what Julia was saying. I had a conversation when Representative Kate was in our House district. She's now in District 11. But prior to her leaving, I had a conversation with her about our projects, and she said the best thing that we can do is have projects that are shovel ready, because if you come to our leaders in different facets, whether the county, state, or even federal, and you say, this is the project that we want to do, and they're going to say, okay, great, how much is it going to cost? Okay, they're going to ask you all these questions, and if you don't have the answers for them, they're more apt to pick someone who does have everything ready to go. And so that, I feel like Dan and Lance have been kind of driving home that point. Why it's in, I just made up a name for you two. Oh, it's the best. Oh goodness. Okay, I digress. That's just something I want us to consider, and just to, to Julia's point, is that if we, regardless of the project, if we want something to happen, we need to put in the effort to have it ready for people to look at.
I will just add one thing to that, and it'll be brief. When we started this project, that was the whole point of it, to get shovel-ready plans, so when we have the opportunity, we're ready to go, and we first are in the top of the list to get money. That's the only reason we even started this. And with that, I'll pass.
Thing. Yeah, I guess I'll belabor the point. Many times when there is an opportunity to get money, if there's suddenly a funding source or earmarks or what have you, the elected officials often want to have something that not only is shovel ready, but that can happen fast. And so even if we could get money for something that isn't shovel ready, we wouldn't be able to say necessarily that it would be able to happen as quickly as we will with it being shovel ready, permits in hand, essentially. We will be able to give much more assurance to our representatives, senators, everybody, that not only do we have the project, we know that we can build it within a certain amount of time if funding is available. And that is all I'll say.
Interesting.
So I'd like to touch on the 4th Avenue, taking that 300,000 out of general for that project. Can I ask, why is that so much for 500 feet of road?
That's a mill and an overlay.
I understand that. I've read through there.
Do you want to describe what that means?
And that means they're going to come out and they're going to grind all the asphalt off from curb to curb. And they're going to come back and they're going to pave 3 inches of asphalt over the entire thing, build a crown. That will also include like ADA ramps, so we can have our handicapped folks with wheelchairs use our sidewalks, because right now most of Stayton they don't have ADA ramps. And we get quite a few calls regarding that from people that do use wheelchairs, or even people that have disabilities walking. They can't lift their shoes up quite high enough and they trip. That's one of the things we use our street funds for as well. We try to. So that's the cost of it. And again, I think Julia and Summer have eloquently said, just because we have 300,000 budgeted doesn't mean I'm spending 300,000. It is whatever the bid is. And if it's 250,000, we put that over into another project. But we're not spending it without approval from the council.
Chair Quigley.
Member Ort.
Okay, so with regard to that 300,000, I kind of brought it up previously, I believe. But you had mentioned, Lance, that you'd want to look at the streets. Let's say that it wasn't 4th, right? You want to look at the streets and see like what else needs to be done in terms of the other infrastructure. So is this an opportunity for us to put this money into the other funds, possibly to kind of bolster those up, so we have an opportunity, within the next couple of years to maybe do one of those bigger projects?
And so I think we received an email earlier today regarding this very issue. And so how I answered it to Julia is, yeah, that'd be great, but it really depends on the road. The road dictates how much money.
Sure.
So let's say you guys want to come up with, let's put $400,000 more into an account. And then we find a road, and let's say I need $75,000 more for storm. Yeah, well, let's transfer 75 into storm, 40 into sanitary, and 60 into water, and the remainder we can use for streets. It really depends on the street, Counselor.
Yeah.
And if we know in advance what we're looking at, I can surely break that down for us.
Okay. So when it comes to the streets, and when we're talking about this, you kind of asked this question, Julio, but So the problem is that we're allocating the money right now in this setting, but we don't know, like if we want to pick a street that needs more attention than others, but we don't know what that is specifically right now to say, yes, we want to put this extra money into, instead of putting it into the street fund. And this isn't necessarily a question, but this is just what I'm thinking. So I feel like we're putting the cart before the horse at this moment if we want to have the opportunity to fix a road that is more distressed than something that just needs an overlay or a mill-in overlay, if that makes sense to the rest of you.
You can chime in and then.
I will say that, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Lance, the $300,000 that is in the budget to be transferred from general fund to streets is a project that Lance has already looked at and is comfortable can be done without all of those other pieces, or that we have those other pieces in place. If you want to put additional money into the street fund beyond what is in the proposed budget, then I think your point is well taken, that we need to make, if you just allocate it, Lance will figure out where to spend it. But if you want to allocate it with a specific street in mind, there might be other things that need to be considered that Lance would need to be able to chime in on.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. I don't know how to, well, I do know how to say it. There has to be a sense of trust amongst the council and our department that we're making decisions that are right for the city. When we look and evaluate streets, we went out and we spent money on this report by a third-party independent specialist in roads to go out and rate our roads. Their PhDs doing this, and they know what they're looking at, and they know how long roads last with the current loading that we have on them. They make recommendations. So that's taking a lot of that out of my hands and our staff's hands, and we're looking at actual science and data. And we're making our 5-year plan using that, along with looking at our master plans and other plans that can tell us what utilities need to go in those streets.
Yeah.
And with the combination of those and the amount of money that we have available to us, that helps our decision-making process. Whether or not I need a committee to help decide which streets to do, that's the council's decision to make. If they want us to form that, that's fine. But I'd just like to share that we're not a political body in the Public Works Department. We're trying to do what's right for the city with the amount of money we have,
Absolutely.
knowing what utilities are in the ground.
Yeah.
And that's really how we go.
And I appreciate the work that goes into it, and I completely understand what you're saying. What I'm thinking is the information that you're giving us right now is based on the money that we have in these other accounts, to say we don't have enough money in these accounts to facilitate doing a road that is in more disrepair. So if we have an opportunity to take some more money and put money into those funds, then that can change that right there changes the whole equation, because we have something different to work with. At least that's kind of what I'm thinking. And then also, okay, so that's one thought. And then my question is, if we say we want $500,000 to go from the general fund into the street fund, do we have to decide where that comes from? Like, do we have to say, I want this money to go from here into here, or do you figure that out?
You have to tell us what fund you want it to come from, which I assume would be unappropriated, and then you would appropriate it into the street fund. You don't necessarily have to say what it would be spent on, but that is a normal thing to do through the budget process, but it's not required.
As long as it's the general fund you're pulling money from and
Right.
not the enterprise funds.
Right, sure,
Okay.
yeah.
you want me to talk you through what that would actually look like if that were to happen?
Well, yes, because in all honesty, we've never been told we have the opportunity to do that. I mean, being completely honest, I mean, or if you're looking around the room, like, have you really been told that you have the opportunity to like do that?
And it's been a long time since the council has seen a budget adjustment happen during the fiscal year. That can happen. So the budget is adopted, it's approved by this group, it goes to council, and it's adopted by council. And then as we go through the year, if things come up, either council can make a motion or staff might bring information to the council and suggest a budget adjustment. In some cases, that budget adjustment is just moving maybe between contingency and we want to spend it here. So you can just do a resolution for that. If it's a more substantial type adjustment, then you have to do a public hearing and special notice and a whole process. If something were to happen during the year and you wanted additional transfer from general fund, that can happen through that process. So if it was general fund to street fund in that scenario, it would probably come out of contingency or unappropriated in general fund, and we would move it up to a transfer out. And then on the street fund side, it would be a transfer in, and if it's for a capital outlay project, then we would put it in that appropriation bucket. That's where council would say, okay, management, we're putting that money in this bucket to spend it on this. And then we go make it happen. Is that helpful?
So we could do that with the water or sewer funds if we.
And that's a whole nother
Okay.
conversation, just because there are concerns with transferring money from a utility fund to or from. Oh, well, that also. So
that we could, I'm trying to figure out how we get another road done. That's what I'm trying to do. So you could like tell me how to do that, and that's what I want to help with.
I think what I'm hearing you ask is you want Lance to say, maybe on the spot, maybe not on the spot, but if it weren't an issue with what the utilities are in the ground, because we're going to pay for it, what would the road that you would think would be the next road, what would that be?
I don't want to put him on the spot to say a specific road. I want to know if, Patty, you said this well, if this group has the appetite to look at trying to direct money so that we can say we want to fix a road that's in more disrepair. That's my question.
Yeah.
If I may, the process that we talked about, that I just mentioned for the supplemental, that is something that you can also do as part of this process, right? So this is a proposed budget that we've brought to the budget committee, and you are encouraged to make adjustments if you feel like that's the right thing. And you do that by making a motion, having discussion, and then see whether the group approves it.
Chairman Quigley, sorry.
Member Julia, go ahead.
I just wanted to chime in because I'm trying to just get at the heart of what member or is. I just want to make sure there's clarity. The way I'm understanding it is, okay, say we know we want more money in streets, but we don't know what street it is, and so we don't know what percentage is going to be a sewer cost, a street cost, a water cost. Is it best to just transfer that money into streets? Or is it better to leave it in unappropriated and then make a budget adjustment in the future once we have a work session or we have identified the appropriate street and we know what percentage needs to be in the street fund, needs to be in the water fund, needs to be in the stormwater fund? I think it's like, what is the best way to do that? Is it better to put it in the street fund and then transfer a little out for those other things? Or is it better to do it in the unappropriated and then transfer into those once we have a street determined?
So the easy answer is I would put it in unappropriated. I would also caution the committee and council with using any kind of general fund money for water, sewer, storm, because that's taxpayer money, and you'd be applying it to a ratepayer-based fund, And there are many political and potentially legal issues with doing that. So
Okay.
have to be careful with that
So you're
one.
more limited by, so the water and sewer, those ones you can't necessarily, so if we're redoing a street, we can't necessarily add any additional money to that from general fund if we needed to get a street done.
So general fund could loan that fund some money,
Okay,
but not just straight up transfer.
okay.
And that's actually happened. You have that happening right now, where your stormwater fund has borrowed money from general fund and is paying it back over time.
Got you. So really, if we know we have money to spend, it's probably best to put a majority of that, maybe reserve part of it for unappropriated if we wanted to loan money to these other funds. But if we know it's going towards streets eventually, still have maybe 80% of that just put into the street fund. Would that be
Yes.
okay?
Member McDonald.
Just to point out, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if we transfer money from general fund unallocated funds to the street fund, let's say we decided we wanted to transfer another 300 grand, that also removes 300 grand from our projected ending fund balance of the general fund, correct? And that number right now is a carefully balanced number that the staff has looked at and said, this is a good amount that we feel comfortable having, and anything we reduce that by could potentially make you less comfortable with that ending balance number, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Member Cranston.
If we were to borrow money from this sewer fund and the water fund, if I recall, those two funds were regularly in our unhealthy categories. Is that correct? How much damage would that do to our 5-year projection of those funds?
What else? We don't have 5-year projections for this year, but well, I'll say historically in the last several years, the water fund's the least healthy of our funds. The sewer fund's reasonably healthy, but we have a lot of capital projects coming up that can't draw SDCs from, so we'll be using sewer enterprise funds which is going to draw down that balance. And those are very important projects for this city as well. I don't know if I answered your question.
I think you kind of did, but basically what you're saying is if we were to allocate $500,000, borrowing money from those funds would hinder their use and abilities and their vibrancy next year.
I'm not even sure you could borrow from the water fund.
Well, not borrowing from, but having them borrow money
Okay.
to do the projects.
I see.
So I have one other question.
And I think the short answer is we don't know. We would need to do that analysis, but given what Lance said, there could be concerns. Yeah.
Member Sims.
So I mentioned this before, but looking at the paperwork, 29% of the general fund budget is unappropriated and contingency. And previously we had 24% in 22-23. So you weren't comfortable with that 24% level?
So keep in mind that of that 29%, $1 million is ARPA that was not in there last year. So I don't know that we ran the numbers of what that would be with that out of the number.
And is there restrictions on the ARPA funds or?
Yeah. Mhm. And we'll be bringing that to council to identify the appropriation, how you want to spend those ARPA dollars. And it could very well be streets and water and sewer. So that there are possibilities to use the ARPA money, probably more to use them for non-streets than streets, but that's still on the table.
Yeah, I can't recall, but something tells me that that transportation wasn't allowed for ARPA funds, but I could be wrong. We'll be coming for you, but something in the back of my head says you can't use ARPA funds for transportation projects. Light rail perhaps, but not street overlays or maintenance, things like that.
But I mean, even if we went down to 25% unappropriated and contingency, I did the quick math. I mean, that would easily fund a $200,000 project for streets, or even more, a little more than that.
Yeah, and
Well, I mean, 300,000.
yeah,
It was
in
like
your budget,
350,000.
in your memo that we provided last night, it does identify if we spent that sort of the next project on the list that Lance would recommend is a $200,000 project. And that's certainly possible. I mean, if that is the will of the budget committee to take $200,000 additional funds from unappropriated to a street fund, I think we would be okay with that. We just don't want you to bring it to zero. We recommend keeping a decent amount in there.
We need to keep moving here so we don't run out of time.
One more thing, Chair.
Go ahead.
I would just, along with that, because I know they have ideas in their head if they had unlimited funds, so they're not short of things they would do if they could. That's definitely something I would like to see when we get our first quarterly update, is A, the 5-year projection, and B, the health of each of those funds. And then we can potentially look at doing a budget amendment if we wanted to get more funds at that time. It's probably a smart way to go.
Quickly, I had a clarifying question
Go ahead.
for Summer. So when we had when we're doing our work sessions for the utility rate study, I specifically asked the consultants if we could move general fund dollars into the enterprise funds. And they said yes. They said that it's either that was one way that we could put money in there. And when we were talking about moving money earlier, you said that we could do it, but now you're saying we can't.
I'm sorry if
I
earlier
guess
I
we
said
didn't
that
say
we could.
specifically, but we keep getting conflicting
You're getting different
information.
messages. Yeah.
Yes, and it's very frustrating.
Yes, I can imagine. I'm not going to call out your other expert. I can only speak to my professional knowledge and experience and conversations with others who have tried to do this. And there are, I'm going to say, potentially legal issues. Like, you may legally be able to technically do that. I don't know. I'd want to talk to your city attorney about that before doing it, obviously. But I would definitely look at potential political implications of doing that.
So the only way that we can put money into the water fund is by raising the rates.
Raising rates, or you could try to take out debt or get grants. But yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Ready to move on to the water fund? We're going to be having this discussion after we get done with the fund, so let's try to keep going.
All right, thank you. Water fund. Water department provides water treatment and deliveries of clean drinking water to the residential, commercial, industrial customers. Fresh water is delivered from the North Santiam River. We have 44 miles of water distribution lines. We have a water treatment plant that has 3 half-acre water treatment lagoons in. We have the Pine Street 5 million gallon tank, and we have the Regis Street 500,000 gallon water tank. All those are maintained by 3.37 employees. The highlights for the water department are we received an OWRD grant for our secondary water source. Julia and I signed the contract today for phase 1, which is $1 million, pretty much, somewhere in there, to do phase 1, which is construct a 16-inch water line out in Shaft Road. That'll be going out for an RFP here in June, so we can start in July for the design. We installed an emergency retrieval system at our water intake for safety for our public works employees. We're installing new water services out on Wyeth Street currently, and we designed the Douglas Street water line this last winter. So that's ready to go out to bid here in the next couple of weeks in June. Part of the highlights for 23-24 is we're going to be constructing a 10-inch water line in Ida Street. I think I'd covered that a little bit earlier. That'll be part of the Ida Street overlay project next year. We'll be putting a 10-inch water line in that. We're constructing an 8-inch water line in Douglas Street this summer. And there's the 16-inch water line in Shaft Road as part of the ASR project. Changes for the water department this year is that this will be the first year they'll actually be receiving funds from the other enterprise funds for using water, meaning the parks, the sewer district, or the sewer plant, the wastewater treatment plant, and pool and the stormwater management facility, the sprinkler system, the water it uses there will also be paying a water bill monthly. Capital outlay for this next year, I've got $171,000 budgeted for the ASR 16-inch water line construction. That's like a $700,000 or $800,000 project. We're going to come up with 25% of that due to the OWRD grant that we received. The Ida Street 10-inch water lines, $300,000, and the water line upsizing in Douglas Street's about $250,000, and that goes from Regis to Shaft Road. When we construct the 16-inch water line out in Shaft Road, that line will now be connected, and we can replace the 2-inch water line that really does nothing over there right now. It wouldn't even put out a fire. So that is what we're at with the water fund, and I'll be happy to take any questions that you have.
Any questions? Mr. Walker?
Yes, I think I remember this right, the 300,000 gallons of water that we used to furnish to the cannery, how much of that have we incorporated in our system now that we don't sell water to the cannery?
I guess I don't, and we don't collect any money from them. So that's it. So we have the budget based on revenues from our water receipts. That's what we spend. I don't understand. We're not selling any more water to anybody else.
And we're not using any of the 300,000 gallons in the system, so to speak.
So how
As the city grows, for example, we need more and more water.
Yep.
Okay. Of the 300,000 gallons we used to sell to the cannery, how much of that is incorporated in the system for our use as a city now?
So how this works is we only treat enough water that we use. We don't treat that extra 300,000 gallons, what you're talking about. So we don't create it. If we don't, we don't need to create it and spend money processing water from the North Sandy Am if we're not going to use it.
Are we using any of it?
No.
We're using the same amount of water we did 10 years ago.
Other than the subdivision, the new developments that occur with their water meters, that's it. And so I would say over the last 5 years, we've got maybe 100 new homes that were built. So we got 100 new water meters.
So is there a number that associates with that?
100 gallons per person per day, 110 gallons per person. I haven't calculated, so I don't have that.
I think, so in page 67 of your budget package, the measures, it says water usage billed gallons. I think that sort of answers your question of, so between 2021, 22, we anticipated 472 million gallons roughly, and 22, 23, it looks like about 371 million gallons. So I don't know if that answers your, it varies obviously based on water usage and those types of things, but.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good. All right, Lance, how about sewer? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Mr. Sims.
So I probably missed this, but I'm looking at the capital outlay of 721,000. But if I'm looking on page 67 of the budget, and the capital outlay there is 1.451 million, and I'm maybe missing something here, but I just.
You're on page, what page?
Page 67 of the budget, the capital outlay on there doesn't match.
I'm going to ask Summer to
Yeah, I'm not sure
explain
why
that.
that.
Good catch.
So in case you guys are wondering, I do have the detail of all the budget work that we've done. So Lance, it's 1.45 million, which includes $50,000 for a vehicle, 165 for plant improvements, VFD pump, rebuild a filter, et cetera.
Basically the water treatment plant and the system. I didn't have those numbers in front of me, so.
Okay.
So it sounds like what the detailed capital outlay on page 68 is not inclusive of all the projects that are proposed in the water fund. So Summer, can you run down, I mean, if the committee wants, can you run down that list? The number in the budget is what we recommend, but the detail on page 68 is not inclusive.
Okay, so we've got $50,000 for a replacement truck, 165 for the plant improvements, the 550 for the system improvements, secondary water source project, 686,000. That's what we've got.
That's a total of what? 1.4?
1.45.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, good catch, Mr. Sue.
Chair Quigley, real quick.
Mr. Patty.
Yeah, this is Budget Committee, Patty. Hey, I just had a quick question real quick on this. So earlier we were kind of talking about transfers in, transfers out. And since you already kind of were referencing the budget detail, I was just wondering if you could expand on where the money is coming from to go into this fund and go out, just so we understand how that's legal and not fraught with political issues that you mentioned earlier. Yeah, sure. How are we able to do that without those issues that you mentioned earlier potentially happening? Kind of what, to Committee Member Ort's point, why are we able to do that here, but it's fraught with concerns if we were to do it? I guess is kind of my question. Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? Okay, good.
Okay.
So I think, so the transfers in, as far as, or I guess, yeah, transfers in, what's included in the transfers in? Where is that coming from?
SDC.
SDCs,
Okay.
system development charges.
And that's why that's not fraught with political issues and legal issues, right? Okay, got it. I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
The 10-inch water line in Shaft Road, that's an SDC project because it's in our master plan. So we can grab money from our system development charge accounts, build it, and that's the transfer.
Questions? Guess we can move on, Lance.
Thank you. Sewer Enterprise Fund, funding to transport, treat raw sewage for our residents, commercial, industrial customers, Stayton and Sublimity. Sewage is delivered to the wastewater treatment plant via 33 miles of sanitary sewer collection systems, 4 sewer lift stations. Annual maintenance objective is to include sewer line cleaning, televising, repairs, replacement, lift station maintenance, treatment plant maintenance, pump maintenance, sludge disposal, tracking and billing services charges, and revenues and so forth. Highlights. We replaced a turbo blower at the treatment plant last year. I'm not sure how many of you are aware of the treatment plant, but if you've been down there, we have 2 big SBRs, which are big like concrete containers where all our sewer goes through. The blowers create air in that SBR that feeds the bugs that treat the process, the sewage. And so I know I'm not going to get any more detailed than that. But anyway, it's a big thing. If you don't have them, it doesn't work, and we're in trouble. We designed and started the construction of phase 1 and 2 of the Ida Street sanitary sewer line. It's a 30-inch trunk line that needs to be replaced in Ida Street. It was a priority 1.1 project. This year, we're going to be putting a post-ESBR equalization system in. It's a master plan project again, and this is for heavy flows. I think I've been to council several times and talked about We have all the I&I problems in our community. Not only us, but the community to our north has huge I&I problems.
Infill and infiltration.
Inflow
Sorry.
and infiltration. So that's groundwater that gets in our sewer lines. It comes to our treatment plant. We treat it. The sewer treatment plant is designed to treat 2.7 million gallons of treatment a day. We get somewhere upwards of 6.5, 7 million gallons of sewer coming to our plant during wintertime big storms. So this post-SBR thing, what it's going to do is it's going to give us another vessel to put sewer in while the SBRs are working overtime. So it's a capacity thing. So it's going to help us during flood events or storm events, heavy, large rain events. And so that's what that is. Wastewater treatment plant outfall mixing zone study. It's part of our NPDES permit. We have to get it done before February of 24. We're going to try to complete phases 1 and 2 of the Ida Street Sanitary Sewer Project. And we're going to design phases 3 through 5 and hope to get phase 3 done by next summer. Start construction of phase 3. And so our capital outlay for this next year is $150,000 for the post-SBR equalization, $50,000 for a wastewater vehicle replacement, NPDES permit mixing zone studies, $196,000, and the sanitary sewer collection project is $2.2 million. With that, one more thing, changes. We don't have it shown here, but I know it's in your document. One of the reasons why we decided to start charging our other enterprise funds money for the water usage was primarily the sewer plant. The wastewater treatment plant uses a huge amount of water, and it's upwards of $100,000 a year that we were just foregoing and not having them pay. And so really, Sublimity should be on the hook for paying some of that. And so we've decided to go and charge for that water. And so we made it active for all our other funds and all the other water uses as well. And with that, I'll answer any questions that you have.
Member Cranston.
In the years past, we've discussed maybe getting a I&I. We pay Seymour Pipe a whole bunch of money to come and do that. And we've discussed getting one of those trucks ourselves. Are we still on that, or?
We are still investigating that as well. I mean, my guess is it's probably going to be in the 3 to 5 year plan.
Okay. Do we have an impetus, or is there a way we can push Sublimity to also maybe up their I&I reductions?
I actually, we had a storm here not too long ago. We have a flow meter right at where it crosses Highway 22, and we know how much sewer it comes across. We had a storm, I don't know, a month or two ago that we registered 1 million gallons of sewer coming from Sublimity. Well, in the summer months, it's about 0.17 million gallons. So we know they got a significant I&I problem that they send over here. I talked to the Public Works Director, and he says they have a program in place. And they're trying to and they were going through the budget process at that time as well. And they're trying to raise more money to resolve that. Other than that, I think what we do is our mayor, their mayor, our sanitary sewer committee, their sewer committee get together and we talk about these issues, but that's not for this committee.
Can I make a clarification? Thanks to Member Sims pointing out a discrepancy in the capital outlay between the prior fund. I was noticing that discrepancy. I asked Summer, and the NPDES permit mixing zone study is not in the capital outlay. It's actually under materials and services. So it is a project that will be done. It's very important. It's not a capitalized project. It's in materials and services. So that's why there's a difference in what you see on page 73 and what you see as capital outlay on page 72. But it is in the budget. That's
Didn't hear that. Question from Mr. Sid.
It wasn't, no, it wasn't a question. I just noticed
I missed that.
that there was a difference between the capital outlay on page 72 of this fund and 73. It was a preventive question.
I think I may have had it under contract engineer,
Yeah.
which is a materials and services rather than a cap. And that's probably what Summer caught.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, stormwater fund.
Okay, stormwater fund. Very briefly, stormwater fund counts for the city stormwater utility activities. Annual maintenance objectives include catch basin, storm line cleaning, repair, replacement, tracking, and bringing storm start charges. Revenues of this fund are received by state and stormwater user fees. Highlights for this fiscal year, we spent $29,200 to the Santiam Water Control District for the uses of the Salem ditches and their ditches in the community. Storm drain and catch basin upgrades on Wyatt Street improvements. We do an annual TMDL report to DEQ as part of our requirements for the water quality management plan for the city or for the Willamette Drainage Basin. Highlights for this next fiscal year will be having to up our expenses to the Santiam Water Control District by whatever the CPI West is. We anticipate that to be $31,000. We'll be doing storm drain and catch basin improvements on the Ida Street project, overlay project. And we'll be doing a 5-year TMDL report to DEQ. Once every 5 years, we've got to craft a new TMDL matrix. And so we'll be doing that this year. And then changes from the previous year. Again, this is water usage for our stormwater facility, $5,500. With that, I'll take any questions that you have. Oh,
I just wanted to point out, same thing, there is a discrepancy between what's listed on page 76 of the budget document and what's in the capital outlay, and that is reflecting the stormwater master plan, which is under contract services. I think the reason for that is it's paid for primarily by SDC, so that's why it's a capital project, but it's not there, so.
yeah. So capital projects, stormwater master plan, as Julia pointed out, Ida Street storm drainage improvements of $150,000 and the TMDL 5-year report of $20,000. That is it. I'll answer any questions that you have.
Doesn't appear to be. Any questions? Okay. Moving on.
Okay, moving on. What is left? Oh, Public Works admin, my fave. Public Works admin, there's 4 of us in there. Public Works admin fund receives funding from the water, sewer, stormwater, and parks, street funds to pay for the management and support services. Our duties include building permits, contracts, master planning, pavement management, development review, inspection, council staff reports, engineering services, general administration, water, sewer, stormwater, streets, utilities, and park maintenance. Basically, anything that happens in the Public Works, we facilitate. We deal with consultants, we deal with engineers, we deal with contractors, we give permits out. We're out, we're just out taking care of things. That's all I'm going to say. We are busy, and there's 4 of us, and we're busy. Some of the highlights we've had this year. Excuse me, bear with me here. Shaft Road roundabout design, that's one of my faves. Ida Street sanitary sewer trunk line design and project management, we've got that underway. Douglas Street water main design, contract administration, we've prepared the contracts, they're ready to go out. Wyatt Street improvement design and project management, the annual TMDL permit, contract administration and project management. The aquifer storage and recovery system, putting that grant together and working with the OWRD to get that grant in place and working with them to get a contract. The utility rate study project management, we've been doing that. We've been working with our team to get our utility rates up to date. Right-of-way, site development, stormwater permit review. Next year, we're going to be providing project management for the Ida Street sewer project and design, Shaft Road Roundabout design, project management, 16-inch water main design, construction, Douglas Street water main construction. I mean, we're busy. I don't need to keep going. This next year, we'll be doing the stormwater facilities master plan. We'd look to go out for an RFP soon after July hits. And hopefully we'll conclude the utility rate study here in the coming months. And the next page on my slides, these are the projects we'll be working on this year. You can see we're quite busy. There's myself and there's 2 engineers that are going to be managing all those projects and designing them. So we're busy.
And before questions, I would be remiss to not point out, that this is Public Works Awareness Week. Awareness Week, is that the right? Is it? So thank you. And then this afternoon, I went into the Public Works Administration office, and one of Lance's staff was literally covered in mud because of a water line break. So they do a lot of tough work. So
I'll answer any questions you have regarding Public Works Admin Fund.
Doesn't appear to be any, Lance. Thank you.
All right, SDCs. This will be brief. SDCs we collect SDCs on any new development that occurs in town, mostly. So I'll just go through the rates real quick. Right now, I looked at the CCI for April, end of April, which is the construction cost index. Right now is at 2.6%. I don't imagine it's going to fluctuate much by the time we come to council with the new SDC rates. So the Parks SDC collected approximately $722,000 last year. We're forecasting 75 this year. Street SDCs collected approximately $340,000 last year. We're forecasting.
sorry, just clarification. This year, we're forecasting. So this fiscal year,
Yeah.
not last year.
No,
So,
no.
yes, okay.
23, 24. I'm just not collecting.
yeah.
I'm not going through the full sentence. I'm hoping to.
Sorry.
All right. Transfer of 33,000 streets. Transfer of 33,500 to the roundabout design for the golf club. Water SDC fund. We collected 607,000 of SDC fees in 22-23 fiscal year. Forecasting that we'll collect 78,340 thousand in SDC fees this next fiscal year. We'll be transferring 111,000 of water enterprise fund to the enterprise fund for the 10-inch water line project. We'll be transferring 128,688 to the water enterprise fund for the 16-inch water main construction. Sewer SDCs. We collected approximately $523,814 in 22-23 fiscal year. We're forecasting approximately $58,360 to be collected in the 23-24 fiscal year. We transfer of $150,000 to the wastewater enterprise fund for the master plan priority project 1.5, which is the post SBR equalization project. And we'll be transferring $132,000 to the wastewater enterprise fund for the master plan priority 1.1 project, Ida Street sanitary sewer pipe upsizing. SDCs for stormwater collected approximately $174,256 in 22-23. And we're projecting $69,600 to collect that in 23-24. That concludes the SDCs. I will answer any questions I can for you for that with the SDC funds.
Chair Quigley.
Member Giglio.
I just have one quick question, nothing big. I was just curious. I have 2 quick questions. Do we know why that Parks SDC was so large this year?
Yeah.
And what about is the cost of like the Mill Creek Park if we were to go that route? Do we have like a general
I
estimate?
have an estimate for that. You need to have an estimate before you go for an OPRD grant, so we know very well what it would likely cost. What I will say, the reason why our SDCs along all our funds are huge this year is because we approved 70-unit apartment complex on 3rd, 100-unit apartment complex out here on Golf Club Road, Those are huge drivers of our SDCs. I think those are just, I'll just say that, they're huge drivers of our SDCs. We want development. The more development that occurs, the more money we put into our coffers, the more projects that we can do to build the city like we want it. So I just want to point that out. As far as the cost of the Mill Creek Park, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 million, and that was 2 years ago, 2019.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Chair.
Member Ort?
So, I'm sorry. I apologize if you said this. What are we spending the Park STC fund on?
We don't have a project allocated for it yet. It's just we collect
It's just
it.
going into unappropriated.
Yeah, so when
Okay,
someone
I
builds a
apologize.
house, they come in and they give us, I don't know,
I got
30,
it.
39, yeah, right.
But we can only use the SDC charges to fund new projects, not existing things.
Not just new projects, they have to be attributed to growth.
Okay. So my question about, I'm sure you have a formula, but I just want to ask, the 33,000 that is being transferred out of the street fund for the roundabout design, are we allowed to use any more of that money, or is that is there like a percentage or something that we're allowed to use?
It's a percentage, and that's what that 33,500.
Okay, that's the max. So,
Yeah.
okay, I've assumed that, but I just wanted to make sure.
Anything?
So back to the Parks SDC fund. So you say it has to be attributed to growth. Would Mill Creek Park be in that realm?
Yes, it's shown in our master plan. Although what I will say, I would have to go back, Steve, and look at the master plan to see what the percentage of the 4 million we can use of SDC. I don't remember that percentage, and I'm not even sure they put it in that master plan, but.
I don't remember seeing it. I mean, I've looked at it also. There's different phases, and
Yeah.
it's a pretty complex plan. But, so that is something that could be spent towards, some of it could be spent towards Mill Creek Park.
Absolutely.
If we desired.
Okay, Lance. We have those apartments that are going in by Dairy Queen, and that's next to the Squishy Park, where we need to replace the mats there.
Yeah.
I would argue that that park is going to get more use and would need SDC charges to facilitate changing out those rubber pads because of the growth that we're having.
So here's
Is that an
what-
argument we can make?
No, it's not, because that's maintenance. You can't use SDCs for maintenance. You can only use it for capital projects identified in your master plan or your capital improvement project.
But I would, well, then the amount that you expanded it from could. So that doesn't mean that we can't seek funds. Again, in Sherwood, there was a play structure that the Rotary paid for the replacement of, so there could be other sources of fixing that don't require us to spend money that we can explore. But SDCs, if you're replacing something that currently exists, it's not eligible for SDCs.
What about the fact that park has no shade?
If you build something.
Could we build something like,
Maybe.
when I was in Arizona, they had those triangle shades over the park. Could we use it for that? Or is it no, because that's an existing
I would have to,
park?
I can't give you a definitive answer on that. I'd have to look and see.
So you have to continue building parks with the money? Oh, that would absolutely. So no one's using that park in the summertime.
So
You got to come over here, Dan.
yeah.
So
which in theory, I think the argument for that is that the residents, taxpayers, pay into the general fund that pays for the maintenance of those projects. It's the new growth that is coming in, that's paying the system development charges, is paying for the new stuff. So, and we can talk more about, there might be different ways to look at it, and there certainly might be things to be added. I think with the Park SDC, we're not recommending spending any money now, in part because Mill Creek Park costs more than that, and if you're going to do a big project, you need to have money in the bank to do it.
We are looking, and I know, Steve, you sat on the Parks Board, and we've had these conversations multiple times about starting to try to, instead of waiting for the big bang buck from the state, that we start using some of our own funds to start doing that in smaller phases. I think that's something that we should really entertain, especially as our SDC accounts for parks keep going up. I mean, we bought a lot of parkland and spent a lot of parks funds on parkland. Now it's about taking that open space that we built, that we paid for, to start to improve it for use. So we've got baseball field we could probably put in there. We got restrooms. There's all sorts of things we could do, and we could do it smaller, at a slower rate. And the SDCs could be used for portions of that. Sure.
Do you have the cost broken down by phase of
Yes,
that?
yes.
Oh, you do. So you could pick a phase and target that phase.
Mm-hmm.
Chair Quigley.
Member McDonald.
When we're looking at these forecasted fee numbers, I think I know the answer to this, but does this include or not include any development on the Fern Ridge property?
What Fern Ridge property you're talking about?
The 19 acres
Oh, you buy Foothills?
Yeah.
As far as I don't know anything going on there. You're in the know?
Dan question.
Well, so with SDCs, in my experience, it's generally best. I mean, I think Lance has kind of given some forecasts of likely development, but I wouldn't bank on it. But, so it's more you want to spend the money after you know you have it versus projecting. So
This is a speculation, but it's more than speculation. There are years past that we've collected very little SDCs. And then we've had, like this last year, we've had 2 large apartment complexes. So it's really kind of speculation. Normally we collect about 20 houses, we get built or roughly in there, and maybe a little bit of commercial work. It usually adds up to about $60,000, $70,000, maybe sometimes more. Last year was an outlier, and we could take more outliers because it really helps.
Yeah, I guess I was probably just fishing for news from Dan on that property.
Well, it'd be news to me too. So I'm interested to hear what Mr. Fleischman's answer is to that.
So there has not yet been even an application submitted to develop that property that was recently annexed on Fern Ridge Road. And there will not be any construction that happens during the next fiscal year, guaranteed.
Good answer. Thank you.
With that concludes Public Works, unless you have more questions. David was getting ready to say something.
Chair Quigley. I just wanted to go ahead and kind of maybe some of the Budget Committee members could express any kind of indication as to whether or not there's interest in pursuing a strategy where Mill Creek Park is constructed and pursued in phases rather than pursuing this kind of all-encompassing grant to go ahead and fund the park. I kind of want to hear what the appetite's like for that, because at least for myself, I've heard it expressed from North Stadium Youth Sports Association that there is need, right, for sports fields for the youth in this community, and they are drastically underserved in Stayton, like flat out, I'll just tell you that. And so I want to know from you guys if the indication is to continue pursuing this all-in-one approach with the state, or if you would like to see this constructed in phases, because ultimately as council, I feel like we kind of need that direction. And so I'd like to hear a little bit more of an expansion real quick, if we could, and we can also just table that till later at the end of this process. I'm fine either way, but I'd like to hear some direction tonight.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's catch up with that towards the end if we could. All right, Julia, facilities.
One more fund. So this fund accounts for the rent received for city facilities that includes administration, finance, police department, and transfers for personnel costs associated with maintaining city facilities. This year, this current fiscal year, we did stucco repairs on the buildings next to the Star Cinema and City Hall, and we are going to complete the facility master plan to the point that we're comfortable with. I mean, it will be done, and we will pick it up at a later date based on council goals and council direction. For 2023, we did include some funds to assess the interior of City Hall and make recommendations on design and layout accommodations. So as you may remember, so we were working on a facility master plan, the idea being a potentially new city hall actually in this complex. Frankly, when I started, that was being discussed with all of the other infrastructure. It seemed a little tone deaf, that maybe that wasn't the highest priority in taking it out to the public for input as well as potentially funding. Didn't seem very appropriate, and council said as much in their goal setting that let's get far enough along so that we know what a budget might be, but not pursue that further. And so we've allocated some funds in the budget so we can look at using our current facilities a little bit better. If we're going to be there for longer, then it is maybe appropriate to invest a little bit more in our existing facilities rather than be as cramped as we are. So that's what that is for. That's it. Any questions on facility fund? Or anything else?
Anybody?
Chair.
Member Orr?
Does the facilities include, is it the Moose Lodge? The lodge, where's that?
So
Next by the dog park.
Yeah, that is property that is owned by the city. It does not include, this fund confuses me, to be frank. Summer, can you talk about that?
Yeah, I'll do my best. So there were questions about the purpose and the role of this fund and how it's functioning right now. And it's another one that goes on the list of, for James, of figuring out where the best place is for those kinds of things to live. So we did make some changes this year, I believe. Let me track those down. Star Cinema and Moose Lodge rents are not coming into this fund this year. They have been historically, but they're not this year.
What fund do they go into?
And you're gonna ask that. I believe it's in the general fund operations, but let me double check.
I believe that's
I think
correct.
that's right.
So this fund, exactly as Summer said, we discussed a lot, which is why I said it confuses me. We need to have a conversation as a staff more thoroughly and with council about what, kind of where these things fall and how they fit and how we deal with development or non-development of city-owned property
Agreed.
that isn't related to another fund.
Agreed. Go ahead.
Very quickly, one question I had with this would be, so there are certain costs that are associated with updating city-owned property. For example, the one that comes to mind is the teen center and the barn that are coming out from like the park and some other locations. Is it possible to pull money from this facilities fund as an alternative to where they're currently being funded from?
So we actually, I believe this year pulled the funds for improvements to the teen center from the general fund operational. It kind of sits in parks, but it's not, it's a transfer from general fund. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know that it would be, it's not, other departments and funds are paying into this fund too. And so I think using money for something that isn't directly tied to administration and city facilities might not be an appropriate use of these funds, but am I right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think that makes sense, right? So that's why we moved them over into general fund operating, because the operating category is not allocated to the other funds. It just uses property tax and other resources.
Julia, do we have an allocation or a budget to repair the sinking floor at City Hall?
Not at this time. I mean, that certainly could be something that as part of our funds to assess it, we identify whether or not there is a solution. But no, there aren't funds at this time allocated specifically to that.
Yeah, we can talk about that in the council meeting.
It's not as drastic as he makes it sound. When you walk into City Hall, it kind of goes like that.
Let me ask you, will the front door close on its own?
If the floor did not go like that, I don't
Correct.
believe so.
Correct. That's all I want to know. Okay. Are we done with that? Go ahead, Counselor.
I got one thing I wanted to go just quickly back to the water fund. Maybe this is a question for Lance. There was a big discrepancy on the capital outlay between what's on the slides and what's on the summary here. Summer mentioned that there was, I think, $550,000 for plant improvements. It's those two. Well, okay, so there's what was the rest then? Because there was 1.4 million, I think.
It was the secondary water source
There's a vehicle in there too, I thought.
and a vehicle. Yes, thank you.
So, okay. Repeat, and what were the amounts on each of those again?
The vehicle is 50,000.
Yeah,
Plant improvements were 165.
plant improvements are 165. What does that mean? What do plant improvements mean for the water?
A variety of things, Counselor. There's just numerous improvements. We have the water we have 3 cells down there that treat water. Each one of them has 2 pumps to pump water over to the plant. Those all are probably 15 years old and never been repaired or replaced. We're going to be rebuilding those. It's like $40,000 to do one at a time. So we're going to be doing 2 or 3 of them. There's just other work in there. I thought I had it written down here.
Got your notes here in budget.
Do you? What's that? Okay.
Can you say that for people who's on?
Filter and pumps for pump number 1. I'm trying to find it. I'm sorry. I apologize.
I'm sure there's lots of work to do. I like to hear the narrative, what we're actually doing, just paying improvements.
So Summer, can you just read the notes out loud so that we can all, because I don't know if it's detailed in the budget book.
Sure. It says bleach pump boards.
Oh, yes. Well, she's reminding me now. Yeah. So we have 4 bleach pumps in the bleach room. And there's a board in there that's years and years old, and it's superfluous and it breaks, and we spend a lot of money maintaining it. So we're going to actually remove it and build a new one. And it needs to be done, and it's just part of running a water treatment plant.
Sounds like I need to take my first tour down there.
Yeah, you want to come down? I'll be happy to show you everything.
Chair Quigley.
Member Patty.
Real quickly, can we open that option up to multiple budget committee members, Lance? Because it sounds like maybe there's more than just.
You can get the tour bus, take everybody down.
That's great. That's awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Did you say the sewer treatment plant or the water plant? Just a second.
Mayor Quigley will offer both to you.
I've been to the sewer treatment plant. I'll take that for a lifetime.
The
Thank you.
kids want to go back to the poop plant.
Are we good? Good explanation. Good, Counselor. All right. With that, that leaves us with the end of the budget review, correct?
That concludes the budget review, and we are ready for you to discuss.
Okay, what I'd like to do is I'd like to start off with the indications we made last night to circle back around on. So does someone have that list? Julia, do you have those? What we have from yesterday? Does anyone have those?
It's in the, it's
Sure.
embedded within the memo, so
Right.
I didn't have the specific list. I know that there was
Okay,
a,
so
do you want to just go through the memo?
I think, yeah, that's fine. I think everyone has the memo, right? So I'm willing to entertain the first discussion, whoever wants to start.
Chair Quigley.
Member Gilio.
I kind of wanted to start with just a broader statement and then narrow into the first question, if that's all right.
Sure.
So the first statement is, I am going to be saying that I have some robust suggestions to the budget, and I just wanted to thank the staff for putting this together. I think it is phenomenal. I think that in no way does this reflect really anything other than, at the end of the day, what I feel like we were elected on, and what I feel like the city has been really asking for is robust investment into streets and infrastructure. And so all the things that I'll be suggesting, or will be suggested, really a lot of them were brought up in this conversation, just have to do around what does it look like to look as many places as we can to maximize direct investment into the streets we have right now. And so with that, there is about $767,000 that I could see. Some of that in some of the street that's already in the street fund, but just shifting it from the current usage. But part of that, the first place I'd like to start is in that first question, and that is to remove it. And my opinion on it is that we should not move forward with hiring a community engagement coordinator and put that $100,000 towards streets, not because I don't think it's a good idea. I do think it's a good idea. I think that it is something that we should consider in future years. But I do think that in terms of considering the priorities of the city, where we're at, we're always going to have to make tough decisions. And what this comes down to is the tough decision that I want to make is foregoing this position and preventing rates from going up for people that need to pay more for their streets to be fixed. So I think that there's a dire situation. And so on that's just my position on this question.
So is that a motion?
Oh, I can make a motion if we want to. I make a motion to remove the community engagement coordinator position and to divert that investment into the street fund.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded to remove the new community engagement coordinator position. Let's have some discussion. Mr. Sims.
So I'm definitely on the fence on this position, on the community engagement coordinator. Can you, Julia, this is at you, Julia. Why do you want that position? What's the benefit versus the cost of having this position? I mean, the layman terms.
So, I mean, I'm not sure what more to, in order to help implement council's goal of more community engagement, awareness, education of what we are doing and why we're doing it and getting information to and from them, we cannot do more than we're currently doing with what we have. So if you want more than what we're currently doing, which I think you do based on your goals, we need to have the support to do that. And that, I guess I don't know what more to say other than that. It's tied to your council goals and would allow us to implement them.
Thank you.
I think it's articulated in her response for the memo from last evening or the night after. And is that fair, Julia?
Yes. Yeah.
Any further discussion? Mr. Singh?
So I could not disagree more with that motion. I have seen firsthand on what a community engagement or an outreach person does for an agency. And I will tell you, it is well worth every penny that you put into it. If you are trying to get community involvement and engagement, if you are trying to get people interested in upcoming levies or maybe increases of rates, this is the way to do it. This is the way for that person to focus that and for the city to grow in a positive way. So I could not disagree with that motion.
Chair Quigley.
Mr. Patty.
Yeah, I just want to ask real quick, Julia, specific to this motion, since we're deliberating on it. I would like to know so my question comes from last budget committee when we discussed the chamber, right? And what the chamber is going to serve for us and what our membership within them is going to do, right? So having that in mind and those services kind of seem similar to some of this here. Was the possibility of having an RFP done to solicit some of this from an outside consulting firm or something like that done, ultimately, like, was that considered or anything? Just curious.
No, it frankly wasn't. And I guess what is envisioned isn't a one and done. It's somebody to do the work, to do that daily work. And Member Singh's comments I appreciate. And I guess I would just make the point that it's not just about trying to sell something for a levy or information. It's truly trying to engage the public so that as you, the elected officials, the budget committee members, other committee and community members make decisions, you're making it based on that fully robust public involvement. And so I just want to make sure it's not seen as like a marketing tool or a trying to sell something. It's really, we want to make sure that we're reaching everybody. I know Facebook only reaches some people. Nextdoor only reaches some people. We're not currently on Instagram. There are new platforms created regularly. There's different ways, different generations get information, and we can only do so much. And having somebody that is knowledgeable and skilled at knowing how to reach people and helping our directors and our staff framing their messages and directing their messages in ways to reach the people that we really need to reach, get input in ways that we really need to get it to make the decisions is really important. So no, I didn't do an RFP because it's not something that I envision an RFP would be able to solve.
Oh, that's helpful. Thank you.
Chair Quigley.
Mr. Cranston.
What would be the trigger pull date on actually hiring someone for this position?
Well, we'd have to advertise it. So obviously I wouldn't do anything until I have budget approval to do it. And then we would likely, we need to get the position description finalized. It would probably be a union position. We need to run that past the union, advertise it. So I'm thinking it's probably going to be, multiple months before we would actually be in a position to actually hire somebody before, but as soon as the budget allowed, we would move forward to that.
So you'd be looking fall, late fall?
Oh, gosh.
Rough guesstimate. I'm not asking for exact.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably good.
Okay. Thank you.
Member McDonald.
I tend to side with Member Singh on this one. I have two additional points I wanted to bring up, and I, from personal experience as a one-man department in my current position, you lose value in your senior expertise when you task them with stuff that shouldn't be their job. They pay me, my employer pays me a lot of money to do stuff that they should be paying a much lower paid employee to do. You get a lot of value. I not only look at this as the value we get out of this particular position, but the additional value we get out of our current employees and staff being freed up to do more important, or not, I wouldn't say more important, but other duties that they have more expertise in doing. So I am all for this position, and I think it would be well worth it.
Anybody else? I'll tell you that I'm on the fence from only one specific position. I don't want this person to sit there and spend all day on social media. There's no way I'll support that. And given the amount of social media that we use currently within the city, I have questions about that. Is it really worth that to have this person focus on that? However, I know firsthand and personally the person that's in this position in the city of Independence, and I can tell you without a doubt that he has done a fantastic job in that role, bringing attention, bringing economic development to the city of Independence, to the point of he interacts with not only the city itself, but with all the business community within that community. The hotel that's down there, he has events that have the hotel hand in hand together. It's all promoted through the city. He has a lot of people coming to the city of Independence for his events, and he's done a fantastic job doing it. So from that standpoint, if we can clarify that and quantify it as far as this person really spending their time on development and promotion of the city, not just on social media, then I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and thank you. I will say that when I first started here, I was at a regional administrators meeting at the Council of Governments in Salem, and the city manager from Independence was there and mentioned, she's like, the single most important hire as a city manager is this one. And she, I don't even remember the specific data, but it wowed me regardless of just having somebody that can really help you target. I think they were working on a housing needs analysis, and they got overnight like 200 views on a video that they had done in their community. And so it has the ability to do a lot of great things. And I do not envision that this would solely be a social media. I envision it would be truly a marketing, helping us market businesses, market our facilities, our pool, our community center, our parks, and being out in the community to share what we do and listen.
Chair Quigley? Oh, sorry. No.
Chair Quigley, I want to echo that if this position also includes the marketing piece of it, like Julia was saying, of the facilities and helping to bring, obviously, revenue into the community, but with our facilities, like this building should be used more, absolutely. The fact that there aren't flyers up on the outside of the windows or that people aren't having regular events here is just crazy to me. And so we need somebody who's going to advocate more for our community, but also for us. And the education piece is really big for me too. Like, people in the community don't understand sometimes why we do the things that we do, and we need somebody to be able to go out there and engage with people and get their support for the things that we want to do that will in turn help the community. So if that's the case, then I will be on board with it.
Chair Quigley?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I am actually willing to, I think those are great reasons. I think it's a great position. I'm very much in favor of this position and the idea of the position. I think as I'm looking at the budget, I'm just looking at places where we can pull and divert resources. It's definitely not to argue with any of those positions. I think there's a lot of value, a lot of potential value here. I'm actually willing to, it seems like there's not a consensus. This is not actually one I feel that strongly about. I'm about 52% against it. So I'm fine not voting for this and withdrawing the motion if that's, or we can just go for it and vote on it as well.
Okay, so what do you want to do?
I do.
Yeah.
I have one more question. Have we considered, like, would a part-time position to do this be sufficient? Or you feel that it truly needs to be a full-time?
I thought I knew that question.
Or 0.75, like our code enforcement?
I think that, frankly, often part-time jobs are hard to get somebody that wants to do part-time jobs. And so I think we will have much more opportunity to get people that are looking, you're going to get young people out of college, they're not looking for a part-time job. I think that, or they're freshly, like new in their career, you're not going to, I don't think that we would get as quality a candidate in a part-time position. And I think there's enough work to do to fill a full-time position.
Chair Quigley,
Go ahead.
I withdraw my motion to remove this from the budget, remove the community engagement. I make a motion to remove I don't even know how to do this. I withdraw my motion to remove the community engagement coordinator from the budget.
Okay, so noted. Any other discussion? So with that, we can move on.
Chair Quigley.
Go ahead, Mr. Patty.
Yeah, since the next item I brought up, I feel like I should go ahead and just respond to this real quickly. After kind of reevaluating the staff feedback on this, I don't think that I want to make this motion anymore as far as the FTE position or the code enforcement FTE going to full 1 instead of 0.75. I'd like to see what this position can do this year, especially since we're in the process of hiring a new code enforcement officer, and kind of go forward that way. I'm open to a motion or an argument otherwise, though.
Anybody else? I concur with you on that one, actually. Anybody else have an opinion? No? Okay. Next one.
So then the next item in the memo was more informational. I don't know if there was a motion that was being discussed, but that was a request for information and
Correct.
provided.
Okay. Anybody else? Next topic.
Yeah, I think that one was mine too, Chair Quigley. Yeah, so as far as the neighborhood improvement program options, I'm still leaning towards increasing funding on this. However, tempered with some of the feedback I heard at my last idea of doubling the 25,000 figure, I'm open to increasing it to only 40. I'd actually like to make a motion at this time to increase the neighborhood improvement program grant funding to $40,000, and I would like to motion that. Chair Quigley.
Okay. Is there a second to that? Motion fails without a second.
I think
was there?
Cranston might have been wanting.
Mr. Cranston, go ahead.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to increase the neighborhood improvement program funding from 25,000 to 40,000. Any discussion? Mr. McDonald?
Just want to state that I'm still on board with that. I really liked the character and the results of our last run at that program. I think it gives the community a chance to come up with stuff that we would have never thought of, and that wouldn't have gotten done otherwise. So I'm definitely in favor of this program and like to see it expanded. So I will second the motion for 40,000.
It was seconded. No, we're on discussion.
Third.
Appreciate the support.
Go ahead, Mr. Cranston.
I would like to reiterate what he was saying, and that it does allow for a lot more community involvement. I understand that streets are important, and I would support adding more to that. But when you're looking at the numbers that we're looking at for streets, $15,000 is a foot of linear pavement. You're not really going to go very far by taking it away, but by adding it to this, you do get, you're not giving them something, you're now participating in the betterment of the community, which makes it more important and more valuable. The secondary and the intrinsic values are actually greater in this instance for the bang for your buck than the street. While streets are important, and I will be agreeing with adding more to those also, it doesn't mean we ignore other aspects.
Okay. So I'd just like to see the requirements for earning the grant to be kind of streamlined. I don't necessarily, I would like to see first-time recipients get the first crack at it rather than repeat people. This is my 2 cents.
Chair Quigley.
Go ahead.
I'm not strongly opposed to raising it to 40. I know that we can adjust this because it's under council parameters. I definitely don't love the way it's outlined here in terms of like a neighborhood improvement program, just because I think it is actually fairly narrow. And I would love it to be open to more economic development opportunities and things as well. And so I don't think that's necessarily a discussion that has to be had here. But with that understanding, I do think I take your point, Member Cranston, in terms of like, are you just going to be able to get more bang for your buck if you're letting a private organization apply for some money? I mean, think that 40 might be a good compromise.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and we had discussion. Any more discussion?
Chair Quigley.
Oh, go ahead.
So Julia talked about that she has a pool of money. Julie, I don't remember what slide that was on. We were talking about like the If I Were Mayor and giving money to like contests and things like the downtown window display and things like that. I think I would be, well, one, I would like to take away the neighborhood grant altogether. But if that's not the thing, I understand to your point. What I would like to see is taking that money completely away and adding some money to that fund that then this new enrichment outreach coordinator could use to fluff things up, because that person is going to need resources to do those things, including like fluffing up our website and things like that. So I'd like to see the money spent kind of in that direction as opposed to giving out. Because wouldn't you say that giving out money to specific groups would be the same thing as using, because all that money is for the entire community instead of giving it out to specific people, like say our enterprise funds or things like that. It's kind of the same concept if you really think about it. But if we are not going to do that, then I just want to keep it at the 25 and then reallocate some of that money towards those fun projects that Julia was talking about.
Make a good point. For me, without having the parameters outlined on the recipients on how you get the money, I struggle with that. Same thing that you just talked about.
So do remember that this money would be budgeted under council and would be something that you guys would have the ability to provide that guidance and input on.
Okay. Any other discussion, members? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to increase the neighborhood improvement program from 25,000 to 40. Tammy, can you hold the committee, please?
Member Centani?
Yes. Aye.
Member Cranston? Member Gilio?
Yes.
Member Lewis?
No.
Member McDonald?
Yes.
Member Ort?
No.
Member Patty?
Yes.
Member Quigley?
No.
Member Singh?
Yes.
Member Sims?
No.
Member Walker?
No.
That's 6-5. So I think it passed, but barely.
Motion passes 6-5.
So just to confirm, you said motion passes 6-5, correct? Okay, move on to the next one.
I have a clarifying question then. So then how much money do we put a cap on? How much money we spend for things like, does that money, like the If I Were Mayor, things like that, does that fall under council as well?
That is currently budgeted out of, I think, general operational,
I'm sorry.
non-departmental, I think. So I'm not sure. I think your question is the cap, that.
Or if there is, can we put a cap, or is there a cap?
Council will be able to do whatever council decides they want to do because it's their program. So.
No, I'm talking about the other funds.
That was the 5,900 that was budgeted or proposed to be budgeted is for public relations. So it's not a lot of money, but what was factored into there was some awards for If I Were Mayor, the window contest for the window. I mean, this, how it's actually spent would actually be my decision.
Sure.
As envisioned. And then some sponsorships. So if there's different things that, modest, but knowing that there's only 5,900, I would likely not spend it all in one place.
Okay.
So that's,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. All right, let's move on. I think this is just a statement, right?
Right.
Okay. Street project unappropriated funds, is there a question there as far as that goes? Or a recommendation? Go ahead.
Yeah, Chair Quigley. I think as I was taking a look at this, and I'm sure we'll explore this as a part of the conversation on the motion. I think that in general, considering the large amounts of general fund that seems to be accumulating over the years, I would like to propose a little bit less of a conservative unappropriated fund balance. And I do think that there's some real needs in streets. I think that people have paid this money. I think that that's where it should go. And I think especially considering that some of that ARPA dollars, even though we haven't appropriated it, can still act as a little bit of that buffer right now. And even just hearing what Summer was saying earlier about how there actually is no required minimum because of the large rollovers that we have. So with that being said, I would move that I make a motion to move $330,000 from the unappropriated funds into the street fund. Or actually, sorry, can I strike that? Is it too late?
Yeah,
I haven't, it hasn't been seconded.
Withdrawal.
Well, I actually would move it. I guess we would probably want to do 80% of that if we want to still save some money for sewer and water. I don't know how that works, but let's just say for now. All right, I forgot, man, that complicated my whole thought process. Thank you, Member Ort. Well, you know what? Let's have the conversation and then we can always adjust this later. But I move that $330,000 be moved from the additional unappropriated fund balance into the street fund.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Make sure I got this right. It's been moved and seconded to move $330,000 from the unappropriated general fund portion to the street fund. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so discussion on that?
Can I just have a clarification? I believe that you mean in addition to what's already proposed in the budget, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So that would put us at $630,000 towards the streets. Okay, discussion? Yeah. Member Santoni?
So, I'm sorry. The request was to put up what the fund balances were?
Sorry, I didn't ask properly for permission to speak. Just wanted to see the slide again of the general fund beginning, ending, and unappropriated balances. I'm trying to find it, but I'm lost again. 30?
What slide was that? Do you know?
Mr. Santoni, go ahead.
Since it's my first year, just to speed me up for my next couple of years, could you just go through the nomenclature of the two funds, since finance is not my...
Yeah.
The titles is more what I need.
Just the titles.
And a definition of each one of
answer
them.
this question as well, but I can just say from my mind, what it was taking, so we have that $2,200,000 and something $1,000 it's under operations, and it's in the unappropriated fund, which is the general unappropriated fund for the general fund. So it's not been appropriated to any of the particular street fund or anything like that. And so it's to say, we're gonna take $330,000 of that and move it into the street fund for the purpose of continuing a more robust investment into our streets.
And as City Manager Julia mentioned, on top of the 200 that's already listed.
Yeah, so they've already listed the 300 that they've already moved over.
So that
Yeah.
in my proposed budget, I am proposing to move $300,000 from the unappropriated. The question on Monday was, what if you did more? And the next project that Lance identified was a $200,000 project. So that's where that $200,000 comes from.
Okay.
You're proposing to add, in addition to what is in the proposed budget, an additional $330,000. So it would pay for Lance's project plus another $130.
Or a different project if there are some, it's mostly to increase the investment into streets, and then and then as a council can determine exactly obviously in coordination with the Public Works Department what that.
And again, just from a learning exercise for me, if Mayor or you, Julie, would like to answer this, the unappropriated, we normally just leave a nice large amount in there for what? Go ahead and fill in.
So that's a little bit of the discussion. The idea is you want to have a contingency and you want to have some basic reserves. And what Summer explained this evening is that the way our policies are written, we don't have a minimum reserve currently for general fund unappropriated. We think that we probably need, it is best practice to have a percentage reserve. We were thinking the percentage reserve originally was 5%. The city I used to work for was 20%. So obviously there's a big difference. But the idea is that it's there for more downturn times. Do you want to say anything, add anything?
Okay, no, that's enough understanding there. So if we went with this total of the 6, how much would that leave us in there? Because I'm a big proponent of, yes, rainy day funds. I've got money in my bank account and it's for things like my new roof or a set of tires. So how much would we drain it down to? That's what I would be concerned about.
So right now, the unappropriated for general fund is $2,294,705. So it'd bring it down by 330. It'd be 1.9.
What page is that on in the budget?
I'm looking at the summary, the citywide summary.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, just for clarification, Summer, you said it will leave us with $2,294,705, or that's what it is right now?
That's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So it's going to put us 1.9.
And then remember, 922,221, I believe, is ARPA money that's in there. So
Okay.
so keep that in mind. So
That puts us at,
it is restricted, and ultimately that's a conversation. I just don't want you to leave it just to the ARPA, because then when we allocate the ARPA, which we have to allocate the ARPA, we'll be at zero. So just I want you to pretend like there's not about $1 million in there. 922,221 to be exact.
Lance, are you able to confirm somehow that we can use it for transportation or not, the ARPA money?
ARPA. So
Okay.
we will have a conversation with council, and we will make sure that we have that information. There are, I've been working on a memo that I just haven't gotten to you guys yet and haven't vetted fully with staff. There are some ways that we could potentially do things, but we have to go through some hurdles. It's primarily for sewer, water, storm, and making up the impacts of COVID. So it can be a little loosely defined. But I think we need to have that conversation.
Good. Go ahead.
So without asking my co-budget members, regardless of our source of where we've been, counselors or citizens, if you guys are comfortable with having that reserves or rainy day fund, I'll let you talk about that just so I can glean from that. So it'll help me make my decision to vote for Member Giglio's motion to increase it that much. Because right now, sitting in front of y'all, I'm big for reserves, yes.
Member Patty.
And since that expression was made, I'll just say I appreciate the heck out of the intent of this motion and what is trying to be done here. And ultimately, I'm behind you on that. But to, I think, what you're alluding to, your point, no, I'm not comfortable walking in with that amount of contingency, especially with the ARPA uncertainties. So individually for me, you'll hear, no, I'm not.
Chair Quigley.
Go ahead, Councilor Giglio.
So what I've been looking at is just how consistently, if you look over the budget, there's a consistent rollover every single year, right? And we're getting actually an increase of about $1 to $2 million. Just if you look at our total fund, so where we were 4 years ago was at around like $11 million in our actual like beginning fund balance as a city. Where we're at now is at 18 million. And so there's a certain sense in which you have a fiduciary responsibility, in my opinion, to spend the money that's coming into the city. And we have budgeted very conservatively over the last 4 years to put ourselves in this position, which I think is good. But I think the benefit of being in that position is to take some years where we're a little bit more liberal. And I don't mean that in like a political way, but we're a little bit more, we're pushing the boundaries a little bit more in how we spend this money, because these balances are, especially when you look at that overall fund balance, the beginning fund balance, they are accumulating. And with inflation, that value of money is not necessarily staying stagnant, right? And obviously there is ways that we can invest that, which will offset some of that inflation. So I definitely understand and appreciate that it's hard, and I think we're all very conservative minded in terms of the way that we see this issue, and I am too. It's just what is that? I think that there are sometimes those moments where you take a little bit of a risk in order to provide better services for the taxpayers' money that they're paying in for those services, and you're always in that balance. And I think that the other thing is next year, right? If we don't get if next year, it's not like we're going to be in a dire situation if, for example, we don't get the taxpayer, like if for some reason there's a downturn in revenue. All that means is that those services on streets and things like that, those are going to have to be cut to adjust for that. So I don't think this is a dire situation. I think that there is money in reserves. There will still be money in reserves if worst case scenario happens, but we can always adjust the budget next year to account for whatever revenue did this year. So I just think that while we have the money, we should spend a little bit more of the money. That's my position, and I definitely appreciate what you were saying and also what you said, Councilor Patty.
Gotcha.
And can I do a clarification, or not a clarification, information? So I just consulted with Summer. So if you take out the ARPA dollars and with Member Giglio's proposal, that would leave the unappropriated balance at about 13%, just FYI.
Okay. And I have a question. So at some point along the way, after the budget's adopted and moved on, do we have the council have the ability to come and make a budget transfer of this $330,000 to the street fund?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
So after it's all said and done tonight, if this doesn't go through, does the council have the ability, once the budget's adopted, like say in July, for the council to just give a directive to make a budget transfer of that $330,000 to the street fund?
Yes, you would need to do a supplemental budget or a budget adjustment because it's unappropriated. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's large enough. And because it's unappropriated, it would go through a full supplemental budget process with a public hearing, but you can definitely do that.
That gives me some comfort because I'm in agreement with Mr. Patty about the unknown ARPA piece. That kind of makes me a little bit nervous. Go ahead, Mr. Sims.
And would the board be more comfortable with, there was a $200,000 project suggested for Douglas Avenue by Lance. Would that be, I mean, it is somewhat less, but is that more conducive to adding another street project?
Mr. Cranston?
I would say, yeah, that is more conducive. I've been on budgets where we've spent a little more in the year, and kicking it to the next year is why poor people are kind of poor sometimes. Not to lay on, but if you look at what the standard of that is how much money do you have in the bank is where your actual wealth is at. It's not at what you can spend, because we're not talking about spending our necessity money. We're talking about spending our contingency, our rainy day fund money. So you're talking 18 million. That's not what we've actually got. We've only got the extra. You can't do, if you get to the point next year where we're having to choose between paying our employees or doing other things, that's where that are necessary, not unnecessary. But I mean, there's certain necessities that we have to do in order to stay in business. Eating it up today sounds good and it looks good on paper. It tends to bite you in the backside when you get to the end and you've got more debt than you can handle, or you have to finance something that you shouldn't have to finance. And I'd be willing to go to the $200,000 for that project that's been stated already.
All right, thank you. Member McDonald?
Yeah, I'm with Member Sims and Cranston on this one. I think we've already got a suggested project at the $200,000 level. I don't think an extra 130 gets you a full another street segment anywhere. So, in keeping with the others' concerns about the reserves, I think that's more appropriate since we've already got that it's kind of outlined for us. So I'd be in favor of the additional 200,000.
Okay. Member Julia, would you be? Hold on. Member or
What about an extra 40,000 into the street fund? Just saying.
Member Julia, would you be opposed to the adjustment as recommended by Mr. Sims?
Before I comment on that, I think, yes, by the 330,000 by itself, there are some other funds that I'm wanting to divert as well. So this isn't the end of the funds. So there are some other ideas that I have.
Okay.
That being said, and this should just be to Member Cranston's point. So if you look at the street fund in general, is operating as a little bit more as needed basis. So I'm not that worried about it, but I am willing. It does feel like the mood in the room is 200,000, and I think that's definitely better than nothing. So I'm willing to take that. So I will amend my motion to increase the funding to the street fund to 200,000.
Okay. Anybody have any more discussion on this?
The person who seconded it also needs to agree to that.
And that was Mr. Sims.
I agree to that. I second that.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded to modify the amount from $330,000 to $200,000 to move unappropriated to the street fund. Any more discussion? No. Tammy, please hold this one. I guess go ahead, Tammy, please.
Okay. Member Santoni,
Yeah. Yes, to 200,000.
Member Cranston,
Yes.
Member Gilio,
Yes.
Member Lewis,
Yes.
Member McDonald,
Yes.
Member Ort,
Yes.
Member Patty,
Yes.
Member Quigley,
Yep.
Member Singh,
Yes.
Member Sims,
Yes.
Member Walker.
Yes.
Motion passes 11-0.
Just a reminder of the time. We're getting close to 5 minutes here for the night. Yeah. Just to reminder. Okay. Streetlights, there was a recommendation from Julia. You saw what her recommendation was.
So so the streetlights we discussed, or there's the information, and then I provided that additional memo. So yeah, my recommendation is to.
Right. That's what our city attorney recommended, so.
He didn't specifically recommend don't do it, but I recommend don't do it based on information he
He
said.
posed a question, so. Is everyone good with skip?
Chair Quigley, who am I to question legal advice?
What's that?
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Anyone have any other opinion other than that, so we can move on? All right.
The next item was informational.
Right, correct. Yep.
And then Member Ort, who stepped out, had asked questions about the pool.
Yep.
So again, this was more informational.
Okay.
And then Member Giglio had asked a question that is also that was in the supplemental information also about the pool. So I'm sure there will be discussion.
Chair Quigley? I would like to discuss the parks, the SDC funds in the parks for allocating some money for Mill Creek Park for some of the, at least one of the phases.
That's a good idea. Can we do that? Can council do that on their own, or does it have to be in the budget committee?
If you want to allocate the expenditure, well, if you want to allocate the expenditure through this process, this really should happen here.
Fair enough.
If you want to do a supplemental budget at a later date, then.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Sims, you have the floor.
Well, I do believe, I don't know the cost of each of the phases, so that is one of the issues. But I would like to allocate some money to at least begin some of the projects over at Mill Creek Park. I don't know how much a full phase would cost, or a baseball field, or some volleyball courts.
Phase one, I'll just start there. Phase one, we were going after a $750,000 loan. I think the total project was 1.25 million. Phase one would do the restroom. It would do some pavilions, some paths, the parking lot. That was 1.25 million. That wouldn't touch the, and I think the playground around the restroom facility. I mean, I don't have the master plan here, but it was a $1.25 million project.
It really can't go anywhere without a parking lot and a bath.
Well, it's the restroom is the key. You have to have some sort of, but yeah, that's 400 grand right there. I mean, we paid 350 for the new restroom down at Pioneer Park, 2015.
Because of course you did it.
You take that and 40% more than that probably now. And, that's what we designed, that, we can pare that down. We don't necessarily have to, build what we showed on the master plan. So you come up with a number. What we can do is work with city council and figure out the plan that works. That's really what we're going to have to do anyway, quite honest.
I mean, as I read it, you have unappropriated 1.082 million in your fund to spend.
So real quick, the Pioneer Park improvements, we took the old basketball court out. We built the new courtyard pavilion around the restroom, concession stand, and some plants that cost us about $700,000 in 2015. It's spendy. It's and that was with an established park, and this is all going to be raw ground grading. There's a lot of grading that goes along with that. So earthwork's going to cost you some money because it's just raw field right now.
So really, to get started, it sounds like you need at least $700,000 to get a restroom and the.
What I will say is you tell me, and I will work with the city council to come up with what they want. I'm not going to pick it. I'll bring, items and costs for them and what they look like, and you guys can decide.
I can't sit here and tell you what it's going to cost for each individual because it's been a few years since I priced it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chair, Chair, I just had a clarifying question for
Member Orr. Go ahead.
Lance or Julia. I remember at one point recently there were some possible monies from the state that we could use. It was like for homelessness issues. Is that money still possibly available that we could put towards creating a bathroom?
It wasn't real money. It was if you had the money, what would you use it for? So it wasn't really there. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We're gonna, Mr. Sims has agreed to table that one. Let's try to get the next one.
Point of order.
Go ahead.
I have two more motions. Do we want to I don't know if it's possible to extend this by, just to have an understanding that we can extend this by 15 or 30 minutes, or do we want to extend this into tomorrow?
Yeah, it's up to the committee. You guys want to do it another day, or do you want to try to wrap it up tonight within the next 15, 20 minutes? Okay. Well, I guess that falls to the chair then. When's the next meeting if we have it? Tomorrow?
Tomorrow, yes.
From 6 to whenever?
Can we do it in an hour?
So, yeah, I know that. Go ahead.
Donnie, go ahead.
Excuse me. I believe most of you know I will be absent tomorrow.
I think the two discussions, I think we could have them, and one of them we already had part of it. I would say that the two motions would probably take no more than 30 minutes, but yeah, I think. I know.
What's the
The two discussions.
Sorry.
Oh yeah.
I was just going to ask if there's.
What they are?
Well, no, if there are other people that if you have two motions, but everybody else has two motions, then definitely. But if there's only one proposed or two additional motions, it might be.
Chairman.
Mr. Singh, go ahead.
I would prefer to try to extend this out for another hour, then try to come and revisit this tomorrow.
Agreed.
And see if we can hash this out.
Okay.
I don't mind putting the extra effort in.
Okay. Thank you.
To save. And we have snacks, so I think that's well worth the effort.
Sounds good, Mr. Let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back at 9:05 and we'll knock it out. All right, let's re-adjourn the meeting and get moving. I need to point something out to the committee here, if I can, for a second. It was pointed out to me that a typo was found in the proposed budget for the pool fund's property tax gap reserve. We good with this? Okay. The proposed budget amount should be $10,000 higher. So I'd like to entertain a motion where we request an adjustment to the proposed budget for this amount as follows. Approximately $2,400 can be moved from the unappropriated ending fund balance, which would in turn have the remaining $7,600 be adjusted with an increase in the beginning fund balance. Updated projections for the current year show resources coming in higher than our original projections for senior programs, pool rentals, daily drop-ins, and swimming lessons. So if someone would entertain that motion, that'd be awesome. And I can read it again if you need me to. Or someone can put it in the form of a motion for me. Councilor Ort, Member Ort.
I guess I don't understand the reasoning.
So when I went back to do the comparison of the calculations of the contingency and unappropriated amounts, in the pool fund calculation, it calculated at 13,200, and I made a typo when I entered it into the budget system and just did the 3,200. So in order to meet policy, we need to add 10,000 into the, that reserve amount.
So just a clerical change, essentially,
Okay, so the motion is to,
is to should increase the
Increase
amount by
the-
$10,000. Right?
Correct.
The unappropriated amount.
Here, hold on. What's the actual number now?
I'm going to have Summer propose a motion that will fix it, and somebody can say so moved.
There you go.
And then somebody can second.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the requested adjustment would increase the property tax gap reserve by $10,000. And in order to make that adjustment, we would move 2,400 from unappropriated ending fund balance, and we would add 7,600 to the beginning fund balance.
So moved.
There you go. So moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? All in favor, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries 11-0 if I'm counting right.
Thank you, and I apologize for the error.
Okay, where am I?
Chair.
Go ahead.
I would like to make a motion. I apologize, hold on. I'll change my page. I'd like to make a motion to change the pool FTEs to add an additional 0.17 FTE with the understanding that that's going to go towards instructional time as presented in the on page 5 of the memo one. The first memo. So my motion is to add 0.175 additional FTE to the pool
I second.
FTEs.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to add 0.17 additional full-time employee to the pool fund, correct?
Into the motion, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
So it states here that while this would add an additional $5,400 in salaries, it could raise our estimated revenue by $8,100. And so there's a $3,000 net there, approximately. And I think that there's a demand for it. What'd you say?
Okay, further discussion? Anybody else? Okay, the motion, the second is to add 0.17 additional FTEs to the pool fund.
Actually, just to clarify, I think that the motion would actually be to add $5,400 to the salaries.
Oh, correct.
Is that correct, Summer?
We can add we can add the full amount to the revenue side, and then the rest would just fall down into unappropriated. So if you want to put the full amount of the revenue that would be recognized and the 5,400 of expense,
okay,
we can do that.
Okay,
Is that what you were asking for in the motion?
sounded like it. I think so, yes.
because does it need to be 0.178? Or does it- Okay.
But
She
you're
says
talking
that
about
0.17.
revenue and I'm talking about salaries. So
Okay, then I misunderstood. So you can do the adjustment for the 5,400 to expenditures,
okay.
and then we would need instruction on where to adjust the balance for that, because it has to, the budget has to stay in balance. So if we adjust the expenditure side, we either need to flush that down in unappropriated, or we need to adjust revenues by that same amount.
Okay,
So
so I just need you to do.
I think that the motion would be to modify the budget to increase the revenue by $8,100, to increase the,
Okay, I rescind my motion.
okay.
You rescind your second?
I rescind my second. Yes.
So I
Okay.
believe that the motion would be to increase the revenue in the pool fund by $8,100, increase the salaries by $5,400.
Yes.
And the remainder go into unappropriated. with the intent to increase 0.17 FTE to provide swim lessons.
So, yes.
I
And
think I might have
seconded.
started a trend.
Okay, so moved and seconded to do the,
Oh,
McDonald.
you so
McDonald.
moved.
Okay, so everyone knows what the motion is because I'm not sure I can repeat what you just said. Go ahead, Julia, please repeat it real quick.
Increase expenditure in the salaries by $5,400. The remainder, the difference, will go into unappropriated. The intent being to increase the FTE by 1.7 to allow for swim lessons. 0.17.
Right. Okay, any further discussion? Go ahead, Mr.
I saw
Franson.
Dan shaking his head no while that was being read. Is there something that he wants to add, or is that just,
Staff,
I'm assuming he was talking about wording, not about the motion.
we're good.
Okay.
Okay. On that, we're going to call for the question. All those in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries 11-0. Thank you.
I am.
Hold on, Counselor. I'm gonna ask for the rest of the committee. They have questions first before we go to Mr. Giulio. Mr. Giulio. Anybody else have proposals, questions? No?
Mr. Chair, who are you?
Member Ort?
I was curious, and I don't know if, I think this is appropriate to talk about because this would increase FTEs or salaries per se, but, or possibly, but what would funding be required to ensure the library could be open 4 more hours on Saturdays? Or would we need to add additional man hours?
I will let Jana answer that.
Yes.
I don't know that I could give you FTE tonight, but I don't have enough staffing to do longer than that.
Cool. Thank you.
And I think that we are okay. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Jana. Okay. Member Giulio.
No, I think.
But what if
Counselor.
Okay.
Chair Quigley, real quick. I just want to go ahead and elaborate a little bit more on that because I think what I heard committee member Ort say is that she's interested in seeing the hours increased in the library and what the fiscal impact of that would look like. And so if I'm hearing you right, you have sufficient FTEs and you can't go beyond that to increase the hours. So if I'm hearing you right, then we need another FTE to increase those hours. Is that what the answer was to that?
So what my answer is I cannot staff more hours on Saturday with my current FTE. I would tell you that the library had a traumatic experience not that long ago, and I would want way more information to decide whether I want to add an FTE, because we don't have a current 5-year projection. I have something I'm working with, right? But I don't want to take staffing that I can't hold when I'm dependent on a levy. So I would rather staff where I know I'm okay, where we want to make it through the cycle of the levy and without having a catastrophic layoff event like we had previously. Yep. So my preference would be, I understand you want me to be open more hours. I want to make it to the end of the levy with my staffing without hiring people that I cannot support going forward. That's not the kind of team I want to build. And so that would be my way more grown-up answer to, hey, I'm okay, please don't do this to me, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being candid, Jen.
Thank you for the explanation.
Yep, thanks for asking the question, Member Ort. Okay, one more chance before Mr. Giulio. Mr. Walker, go ahead.
I'd like to discuss the roundabout.
Okay.
I've been here for I don't know how many years and listened to all this talk about roundabout going nowhere. And I haven't talked to anyone that I know personally that is for this roundabout. And we're here to represent the rest of the public, not necessarily just do what the staff says. So I would consider that we take that money and use it on a street.
Okay. It needs to be in the form of a motion.
So moved.
I don't know.
Second.
I move we take the roundabout design money and transfer it to the street fund.
Okay.
Second.
Just to clarify, it's already in the street fund.
Oh, well, then what do we do? Use it for a street and not for the design.
Do that as.
I mean, we use it for a street and not designed for the roundabout.
We can make that work in the budget. It's basically within the same category, but we would put it in a separate line item. And since it's project-based, I think it's an important motion to make if we're going to do that.
Okay. Was there a second? You second that?
A second. Chair Quigley.
Go ahead.
Just so you know, that's what I was going to say. So.
Okay. All right. So it's been moved and seconded to take that 237, 267, 780, and basically cease to continue on the roundabout design. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay. So there's been a motion and a second on that. Let's have discussion.
Chair Quigley.
Councilmember Giglio.
I just want to make just an argument in favor really quickly. I do think I think there's a number of things that factor into this decision. I think you touched on them, Member Walker. I think that in general, it's not that it's necessarily an unimportant project, but I think when we look at priorities and we look at what to prioritize, I think again and again, what I hear from constituents is focusing on the infrastructure we currently have. And I think there's also a certain sense of like, we're not guaranteed that development if this does go through. I know it's much more likely. I don't think it's a requirement. Like, and I know this is necessarily may not be a very popular point to make. I don't think it's a requirement that we have that development. I think that we have the cannery that's in there that's going to hopefully be, that we have that new development that's leasing out those spaces. I think that there may be some opportunities for some industry there. I think that the hope of getting industry there, for me, is not enough to outweigh right now what I think the public demand for, first, the public in general, just the fact that I don't think it's very popular, right? It's not like the roundabout is not very popular move first. And then the second point to that is that I think that the priority towards fixing streets that are in total disrepair right now. So that's why I think it's an important decision and a hard decision. But I also think that considering how much we have left to spend on just the design, I think it is one worth having.
Mr. Cranston, further debate.
Point of clarification, when you guys say take it from that and move it to this streets, it would be in addition to the other 500,000 we've already discussed. The initial 300, the 200 already voted on. This would put that whole street paving bit to approximately 7.
It's already in the street fund, correct?
Yeah, that's a thank you. Except for the SDC money, so 35,000 of that would not be able to be used on street maintenance.
So we'd be moving approximately 240 to street maintenance, add that to the other 5, so it'd get us just under 7.5 or 750,000. That's what I'm hearing you guys say, correct?
Yes.
So the other amounts that you're referencing were the transfers from general fund over, and this motion would not be a transfer.
Okay, so this motion would not affect those, it would be in addition to those,
Correct.
is what I'm asking.
It's already in it.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Santani.
How would How would Mr. Ludwig and his crew assign streets to use this money?
First off, before I answer that, I want to be clear. These aren't Lance's streets. These aren't Public Works streets. These are the city of Stayton streets. We're there to do your job, okay? So what I would do is I would look at the 5-year plan. I would look and see what kind of utilities have to be done in certain streets, and I would pick a street that's at the highest priority on that 5-year plan that has minimal other utilities to do, because we don't have money in the other utilities to do water work projects and sewer projects until we build some funds up. That's how I would do it.
Anybody else? I'll tell you, I understand your sentiment on this, and it's a hard one for me too, because just on its face, it's really easy to say, take that money and put it into the local streets. At the same time, I've been living here for 20-something years, and that lot over there has been sitting there empty the entire time. And in my mind, it's a gamble, right? Build it and they will come. Is that what we're thinking? I don't subscribe to that. But we put so much work into it at this point that not continuing in my mind leaves it for sure that nothing will be getting developed on that piece of property. So it's a struggle for me, but I'm going to stick to what we're doing.
Question, or
go ahead.
I guess. So the 267 that's proposed, that is to finish the plans and have a complete plan set ready to go, correct? Is that my understanding? I just want to get some.
Just yes, but I'll let you.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So if we see no interest within 5 to 10 years, and say in 10 years somebody decides, yep, we're going to go ahead and move forward with that, are those plans still up to date to current codes at that point, or do we have to go back through this and get those plans set revised to meet certain codes
Say
to that?
If the plans, if our standards, City of Stayton standards or Marion County standards change significantly, we'd have to do a plan review and may have to do some modifications. But it wouldn't be the full project. It might, it's just going to be a fraction of whatever. Let's say the sidewalk approaches change, the detail. Well, we'll have to show their detail, the current detail on there, but it won't be a total design change. It'll just be that specific component of the design that changed, the standard changed.
It's not like a building permit that expires after a certain amount of time.
I understand that, but like ADA, right? It's a constant changing animal. Almost every year, there's some kind of new spec to it that you have to take into account. And each year we go by is just a little bit more money that we have to pay somebody to redesign.
The one thing you want to
pay a little bit more.
The one thing you want to remember though, that is the money we're paying now for design, that's only going to go up for the whole piece, right? So let's just say in 10 years, the ADA ramp changed, or 8 years, and we had to go and we had to change that. The cost of changing that small component on those approved full set of plans is minuscule compared to if the new budget committee and council wants to go forward with the roundabout. It's going to take this design cost and go up 20, 30, 40%. So instead of $267,000, you might be paying $500,000, $600,000 for it. So that's just something to be aware. It's not just looking at the design in 10 years. That may or may not happen. I can't tell you for sure. The standards change, our standards change. But what I can tell you is design costs themselves, like everything else, go up. And so if you wait on it, at the stage we're at now, more than likely you are starting from zero. And so you're going to start from the whole ground zero, ground floor, and start doing the whole project versus if you have a full set of plans and specs already, approved by us, approved by the county, ready to go forward. That's what I'll say.
I guess the other thing I will add is if the cannery property gets up and running, That's going to be the main thoroughfare to get back on the 22. So, Member Giglio, go ahead.
I'm pretty sure Lance just answered this question. So basically, what you're saying, Lance, is that if it's 30%. So if we say we tabled it for a year, came back to it a year later without spending that $267,000, then you would start from ground zero?
Perhaps not after a year,
Okay.
but 3-4 years.
3-4 years.
5 years, yeah, more than likely you are. Because I know a wetland delineation, in which we already paid for, and the environmental work that we've already done and we paid for will all have to be redone, because for number one, the delineation's only good with this division of state lands for 5 years, then it expires, then you got to go do it again. So those are things that do expire and that you do have to start from ground zero.
But we would have a couple years. We would have a couple year leeway to basically reconsider if we were to pause the design for a couple years,
That's
a year
correct,
or two.
but the
Okay.
267 is also going to be paused, and it'll go up considerably as well. So
The other, one other thing I just want to, this isn't a question, I would say. So this would be more on to this. There's two things I wanted to say. One is that all costs will go up in general. So like if we're doing a road, roads are going to go up too. So it's kind of a point that is generally true, across the board. And which I think is true. And then there was one other thing. Lost it. All right. I think I lost it. So, so I just wanted to say that I think all those costs are going up. I think for me, what I would like to say is at least let's take a year pause on this. Because I still don't think we have community buy-in on this project. And just from that perspective, and I think that's something that you shared, Member Walker. I think that's something that you're sharing as well, Member Tim, saying I really don't think we have it. And we're going to have a community engagement coordinator, apparently. So if this is something we want to continue with a year from now and things are still good, I would like to engage the community in a more robust conversation, utilizing that community engagement coordinator, getting community buy-in, and really having a full discussion around it, and understanding that money is from our street fund. And I think when I hear something like design only, not building, this design costs the same as a maintenance, good amount of maintenance for a street. And I think that when you're comparing those two, it's significant. And the other last point, and this is what I was originally forgotten, is that this does feel a little bit like a death by a thousand cuts, right? So it's one of those situations where we put a little bit of money into it, right? And so then there's always the incentive to, you got to finish the job. And then, we're going to have this thing done, and then we're going to put it out for a bid for the federal government, and the federal government's going to cover 80%, 70%, or whatever it is. And then it's we've already invested this amount of much time, we've already invested this much grant money. Okay, so are we going to put the bill for the other $1 million? That's going to come down the line? Those are the questions I really want to consider and have a holistic community discussion around before just plowing ahead with this another $250,000 into this project.
Okay.
Chair, quickly.
Go ahead.
My main concern on this would be removing the money and then spending it somewhere else. Because if you remove the money and spend it, then we do have to find it again. And it's still going to come out of, it's going to hinder our ability to do streets.
Okay.
In continuum. If we were to put a pause, I'd be okay, but to completely cut it out, I'm not 100% certain.
Okay, thank you.
Even though I disagree with the.
Mr. Santani?
Since I'm still on the fence with that, but listening to your discussion as to nothing's been happening with the property, I'm only here 3 years less than you, and I would love to see that property, the field that is, get developed. And if the roundabout is going to accentuate the speed of that happening, Ms. Sears, could you just let us know if we didn't go with Member Walker's idea, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars do we already have before we would move this design money in? Was it two
Give me a few minutes
components
to
or?
Put that through. What was that? I'm sorry.
I don't know if I understand what the question was.
With one of the memo items from that we voted on before we took a quick break, that we're going to be moving 200K over.
So remember, we're
What
not
does that total up
transferring
to?
money. We've already you've moved to transfer basically the 300 proposed in the budget, the 200,000 that was voted on by the motion. So that's $500,000 transfer from the general fund. This money would not be a transfer from the general fund. It would be, or as proposed, it would be movement within what we've already proposed in our budget movement. And does it?
Okay.
So do you need more clarification?
No, just.
Okay.
Either way, we've got, in my opinion, we've got a lot of money, and I like what Member Quigley said about the fact that the lot out there has been sitting fallow, and if this roundabout does help precipitate some movement, that's been a question I've had, not to any one person here or in the past. It's like, I've been here 17 years and there's nothing going on. So if the roundabout helps facilitate, I think I'm leaning towards that. Okay, thank you.
I feel like I also want to point out, and I know counselors know this, but we've been mentioning the federal funding and the possibility for federal funding, and it is certainly uncertain, sure. But we are on the list for earmarks for funding for this project on the premise that it is ready to go. Obviously, if we don't move forward and we suddenly were actually getting money, we would say, sorry, we're not actually able to do that. But it's not quite as pie in the sky as it may seem. And we may not get the money, of course, but it's a real possibility. We are actually on the list for federal earmarks for a portion of this project.
And also, just to conclude on my own opinion, I don't think we're going to foist the development charge. I'm not sure how Public Works would add into this opinion. I really don't think we're going to be able to foist the whole dollar amount of this roundabout onto some developer. They would totally balk at that.
Okay, thank you. We're ready to go for the question. Anybody else?
One more, sorry.
Mr. McDonald, go ahead.
And it's kind of to what Member Giglio said, and it actually kind of also helps my point in support of passing this. And if anybody has played poker before, there's a term called pot committed. And it means once you've got a certain amount of money in the pot, you might as well go all the way, because you're going to lose anyway. Now, that doesn't quite make my point. However, I'm a believer. If anybody asks me, which nobody does, but if anybody asks me, I'm a believer in the potential in that property along Wilco Road. And if anything's going to happen there, this has to go through. And I think because of what our city manager said about being on federal earmarks and how much we've already invested into this project and how it's just been approved once already in the previous budget when we weren't actually in as healthy a shape as we are this year. I still going to reiterate my support for it. And my other point was that I've spent a lot of time in the customer service world, and I think a lot of us tend to fall into the trap of when we say nobody we know supports this thing. Well, that's because everybody likes to complain. You will never hear, nobody calls the city to give kudos, right? They only call with their problems. Nobody calls customer service for your bank with telling them they're doing a great job, right? No, they only call them with problems. So when you talk to people people in my circle, and my day job is on Wilco Road. And so my business traffics that road every day and that intersection every day. And we know that that's going to help our vendors and our suppliers get in and out of our business, and make timely deliveries and timely pickups. So I don't get the hesitancy at this point. I think, like I said, we're pot committed to a degree at this point, and we got to go at least get the design finished so we have it and we can We can then go ask for our federal dollars. If we don't get them, okay, maybe we'll ask for them again next year, but we still have the completed design. So again, that's what I have to say in support.
Okay, thank you. Last chance before Mr. Singh, go ahead.
This is really one that I'm going to stick with. There's way too much uncertainty here to feel comfortable to continuing to dump money on this project when, well, having a finished plan set, yes, you increase your ability to apply and receive grants and funds from federal, state, county, and multiple levels, but it doesn't guarantee. And if we have to continue to dump money, when is the trigger where we say, that's enough, enough's enough? The people from Stayton have paid enough. We can't continue to move on. And I still am going to go back and remind everybody that these are not city roads. These are county roads. And yes, I understand it probably benefits a good 80% of the citizens of this wonderful city. But the maintenance doesn't fall on the city, and it won't unless the city plans on taking over that portion. So we're now putting a hardship on our partners, which I would love to hear that conversation. So I'm still with Member Walker that we basically scratch it.
Chair Quigley.
Go ahead.
I would agree. I'm still in my same position. And I think at the end of the day, the reason for this is because we've been asked for the last 3 months to be raising people's street fees significantly, right? And we've been told this is the only option. This is the only option on how we're going to get this money in the city. And what we've done is we've added $100,000 in a community engagement coordinator, which we approved. We've added a $40,000 fund for the neighborhood improvement grant. And now we're spending an additional $267,000 that is in the street fund towards something that does not directly benefit the current streets in our town. And the reason why I am still very firm on this issue is because a potential good is not as important. A potential promise of growth, which I'm not even sure necessarily is a guaranteed benefit to the town, to the benefit to the character of this community, preserving, I think, a small town feel. We do not know who is going to move in there. I think that I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, but it's not a guaranteed, even if you get development, it's not a guaranteed benefit to the community and the character of the community. But what I know is a guaranteed benefit is fixing the roads that we currently have. And that this money, the street fund, is intended to go for. That's what the local gas tax is for. It is for fixing the streets that we have. And so, in my opinion, while I appreciate and I definitely will, thankfully, I will gracefully lose this discussion. I think it's an important one to passionately argue because I do think at the end of the day, prioritizing what we currently have over a promised potential of good is I think more important. And I think that hard cuts are going to have to be made. And I think this is a hard cut, but I also think that it's more palatable to me than raising people's utility bills more than they already are.
Okay, thank you. We're going to call the question. Tammy, please poll the committee.
Member Centani.
Could we please back up and what are we voting on?
So
Yes or no on the motion?
You are saying to basically stop the roundabout project and use the money that is able to be used minus the SDC funds for other street projects. If you say no, you're essentially saying proceed with finishing the design for the roundabout project.
Member Cranston.
Abstain.
Member Gilio.
Yes.
Member Lewis.
No.
Member McDonald.
No.
Member Ort,
What are they again? If you say no,
No is you're going to proceed with the roundabout project to complete design. Yes is you're going to stop design and use funds elsewhere in the streets.
wait, yes is you're going to stop design?
No is that you're going to stop. The motion is to base.
Yes, is your.
No. Yes, sorry.
There's two things.
Can we restate the motion? Did you write it down?
I'm sorry.
I know that's basically the motion, as I understood it, sorry, was to move money from the roundabout project to other street projects. So by saying yes, you're saying we're going to stop the design and we're going to use money elsewhere in the streets. If you say no, we're going to continue with the design of the roundabout. Right? Okay.
Right.
I'll say no.
Member Patty,
No.
Member Quigley,
No.
Member Singh,
Yes.
Member Sims,
No.
Member Walker.
Yes.
Yeah, it fails. The motion fails. 7 no, 3 yes, and 1 abstention. Right.
Okay. So motion failed. Okay. Let's move on to the next thing. Mr. Giulio, you have one more thing?
No, I'm good.
Anybody else?
Yes. Chair Quigley.
Councilor Patty?
Yeah, I motion to approve the 2023-24 fiscal year budget in the amount of $35,150,198 as presented. Well, no, as amended with amendments.
So I would recommend that Summer, who's been taking wonderful notes, state a motion that
Yeah, let's do that.
you could so move. Is that-
Actually, that motion was fine.
Oh,
It was
okay.
the proposed
Jeez,
budget
Julia.
was the amendments.
Sorry.
Hold on a second. Hold on.
Member Singh and Walker, second.
Are we going to discuss?
No, I'm gonna repeat it. Okay, the motion's been made and seconded to approve the 2023-24 fiscal year budget as amended, correct? Okay. The motion and the second has been, the motion is to approve the 2023-24 fiscal year budget in the amount of $35,915,198 as amended. Is there any further discussion?
Second, right?
There was a second already,
That was
correct?
I just, I'm going back to this $40,000, and I know that it's not a lot of money per se, but to Member Giglio's point about making hard decisions and putting that money where it needs to go, we spent a significant amount of time last year, if you recall, on like increasing the amount of money that we gave to the chamber. And it was like $1,000. And we squabbled over $1,000 for quite a bit of, kind of an embarrassing amount of time. So I think I'm going to be a no tonight on that principle that I think while it might not be a significant amount of money, it's still money that should be spent on our streets.
And again, we're going to be going to our ratepayers and asking them to all of you, we're going to be asking, we're going to be considering raising your rates, regardless of the amount of money that you put into the street fund today. We're still going to be asking you to raise your rates, the street fund rate. So.
Okay,
Chair Quigley?
go ahead.
I will also be a no tonight for just with the roundabout discussion, and I'll also be a no because I'm in agreement. I think after having been through that whole discussion, I would like to see more money into streets, and so I will be a no tonight.
Anybody else? Okay. With that, Summer, do I need to read all three of these first and then the qualifying one, or just keep going?
Say that again.
Do I need to read all three of these motions first and then the
The
statement?
one at the bottom, yes.
Okay, so vote on that one first, correct? Am I going to vote on this?
Yeah, you have a motion on
Correct.
the table.
Motion on the table, and you just heard any further discussion. So the motion is to approve the 2023-24 fiscal year budget, the amount of $35,915,198 as amended. Tammy, please poll the committee.
Member Santani,
Yes.
Member Cranston,
Yes.
Member Gilio,
No?
Member Lewis,
Yes.
Member McDonald,
Yes.
Member Ort,
No.
Member Patty,
Yes.
Member Quigley,
Yes.
Member Singh,
No.
Member Sims,
Yes.
Member Walker.
No.
Motion passes 7-4.
Okay, thank you.
Committee Chair, I have another motion to make.
Member Patty, go ahead.
Motion to approve levying the city's statutory permanent tax rate of $3.3280 of taxable assessed value.
Okay, is there a second?
Seconded.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to consider approving levying the city's statutory permanent tax rate of $3.3280 of taxable assessed value. Any further discussion?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
There's a correction. This is not your fault. There's a correction to the motion that needs to be made. There's an additional piece to the levying taxes. So I can't remember if it's measure 5 or measure 50, but one of them creates a limit of certain buckets, right? So there's general government, there's students, and you can only levy a top amount of $10 for general government. Because of that, we have to tell the county which bucket our tax levy goes into.
Okay.
So you've made a motion to levy that tax, and there's another statement that Chair Quigley can read off
Okay.
that will add to that to say it's in general government.
Okay. These taxes are hereby categorized for purposes of Article 11,
Yes.
Section 116, I believe. Is that what it
I
says?
think it's 11B.
11B.
Sorry.
As subject to and within the general government limitation.
So amended, Committee Chair.
Thank you. Was there a second?
And reseconded.
Okay. All right. So does everyone need me re-clarify that, or we got it? I'll do it just for sake of it. The motion in a second was to approve levying the city's statutory permanent tax rate of $3.3280 of taxable assessed value. And these taxes are hereby categorized for purposes of Article 11, Section 11B, as subject to and within the general government limitations. Any further discussion? Tammy, would you please call the question? Please poll the committee. Sorry, getting tired.
I'll mix it up and start at the bottom. Member Walker,
Yes.
Member Sims,
Yes.
Member Singh,
Yes.
Member Quigley,
Yes.
Member Patty,
Yes.
Member Ort,
Yes.
Member McDonald,
Yes.
Member Lewis,
Yes.
Member Gilio,
Yes.
Member Cranston,
Yes.
Member Santani.
Yes.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, need another one? Mr. Patty, would you like to?
Sure, why not? Motion to approve the city's local option tax rate of 50 cents per thousand of taxable assessed value for recreation.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve levying the city's local option tax rate of 50 cents per 1,000 of taxable assessed value for recreation, parks and pool. I need to read that second comment again.
Using it as
Yep.
general government.
These taxes are hereby categorized for purposes of Article 11, Section 11B as subject to and within the general government limitations.
So amended.
Second, thank you. Tammy, please pull the council or the committee on that one.
Member Walker? Member Sims?
Yes.
Member Singh?
Yes.
Member Quigley?
Yes.
Member Patty?
Yes.
Member Ort?
Yes.
Member McDonald?
Yes.
Member Lewis?
Yes.
Member Gilio?
Yes.
Member Cranston?
Yes.
Member Centani?
Yes.
Motion passes 11-0.
One more.
Do you just want to hand me that statement over there? Like,
One more. You got it? Or I can do it. I'm the chair. I can't do it.
I'll do it.
Go ahead.
It's the library one, right?
Yep.
But do you want to hand her the statement so she doesn't
Oh,
have to
sorry.
have though amended?
So I didn't know what you were saying. Been a long night.
I want to make a motion approving the city's local option tax rate of 40 cents per thousand of taxable assessed value for the Stayton Library. I read the wrong line. These taxes are hereby categorized for the purpose of Article 11, Section 11B as subject to and within the general government limitation.
Second.
Oh, sorry.
It's you, buddy. It's you. Yeah. You want me to Tammy? Hold the council.
It's been moved and seconded to approve levying the city's local option tax rate of 40 cents per 1,000 of taxable assessed value for Stayton Public Library. Any further discussion? All those in Tammy, please.
Member Centani?
Yes.
Member Cranston?
Yes.
Member Gilio?
Yes.
Member Lewis?
Yes.
Member McDonald?
Yes.
Member Ort?
Yes.
Member Patty?
yes.
Member Quigley?
Yes.
Member Singh?
Yes.
Member Sims?
Yes.
Member Walker?
Yes.
Motion passes 11-0.
Chair, I move to approve the receipt and uses of state shared revenues. Do I need to read the rest?
Second.
Thank you. We moved and seconded to consider approval of receipt of and uses of state shared revenues. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. There you go. Motion carries 11-0. Thank you, everybody, for your hard work, your commitment, and your, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's it. We're good. With that, we're adjourned. Well,